generally keep my channel up there. This is why. While we're streaming, I don't keep my channel open. Oh. Like,
So, who's all?
This is my new bean thing. What I do is I cut out the bag and I put it on the inside so that I can tell what kind of beans I have on the inside.
I mean, considering, unless you have a bunch of different ones all the time, like, I wouldn't need to do that.
Yeah, I usually have about 3.
Ah, okay. Now, Beckett will not be making it this week because he was running drama until late last night. He's going to try and make it next week. Sam said he might make it, but as we can see, he's not here. And Eucharist is going to try and make it, but was iffy on if his timing is going to line up. Which sucks, but...
Well, I mean, we always knew it would be like this. So.
Well, yeah, but at the same time.
Yeah, I thought I saw Fairy Queen log in, 10 minutes ago.
Yep, she's more than welcome to come.
She's a server, so she must be getting ready.
She's not marked online for me. No, but I mean, like, honestly, we knew that this was, as it's now going to be panning out to probably closer to, like, 80 to 90 weeks of this crap if we keep going at this rate.
Sure.
Like, there's going to be plenty of time. But at the same time, it's also, we're dealing with something, like, I went back and I was rewatching, essentially, the inspiration for this kind of, like, digital apparatus. And they're going through an equally dense text. It took them more than 2 years to get through it, and that was with 6 readers, some of whom could quote the things that they were reading by memory. Like, I can understand this is going to take a bit. Because, like, they were covered...
I got more coffee out than I put in.
Yeah. There we go. Looks like stream's back up.
Alright, so. See if OBS screws up again. No, and I mean, like, as I was saying, like, they were going through extremely dense text, and before anybody in the audience is going to sit there and go, oh, no, it wasn't that bad, kind of thing. They were covering the frickin' Mormon Bible. If you've never read the Mormon Bible, or listened to somebody read the Mormon Bible, ridiculously dense text for no goddamn reason. And more as it, and so it shall come to pass, and so it came to pass, is that they had a counter up in the bottom corner of the window.
Well, first one got like destroyed and thrown away, they probably made the short version.
Stolen,
Stolen.
technically.
Stolen.
Yeah,
I guess
the guy who was helping Joseph Smith write the first Book of Mormon was doing it for financial gain. And his wife was getting very suspicious of how long it was taking and how little money was coming in from the project at the time. And so he took the current progress on the Book of Mormon to his wife, and his wife stole it. And she did this as a test on Joseph Smith to prove whether or not he was divinely inspired, to see if he could reproduce it again. Well, in the new Book of Mormon, there is this lovely little footnote in Nephi talking about how this one's going to be different because God's angry with him for trusting a woman with the Holy Scriptures. Like, he literally, in the freaking holy text, describes, oh, we're going to have a slightly different version of this because God's mad at me because I screwed up the first time I wrote this down. And people bought it. I don't get it.
That proves the fallibility of the scripture. Like, oh, you're capable of making mistakes transcribing.
No, I mean, I get that, but it's also like, we are talking about a man who founded a religion after being arrested for fraud, for dowsing for gold and never finding gold. The only reason he didn't go to jail is somebody wrote him essentially a recommendation letter to the judge, so the judge let him go. He then went on to, like, do a bunch of things that are contested as far as, like, the historical validity of. But, like, the one thing we can actually, like, say for sure happened is that he was tarred and feathered and somebody attempted to castrate him because he was messing with their daughter. And she that young woman later became his wife after they left Independence, Alabama. One of his plural wives. Like, that's like the one thing we can track is when he was tarred and feathered. For certain, like, this did happen. For being the prophet of a new religion, for that to be the like one historical fact other than your arrest that we can verify before you get to your promised land, I'm just gonna call him suspect on the face of it. But, like I said, and this was them going over the history and doing essentially the same thing we're doing with Dante, but as an apparatus for the Book of Mormon. And he has since done it, well, he's currently doing it with the Bible, he has done it with the Quran. He has said he wants to do the Bhagavad Gita and Mahabharata, but that would be the rest of his life.
Okay. Probably.
Well, just the length. Like, just think the Bhagavad Gita alone, let alone doing the whole Mahabharata. It would be
it's like a library of tomes. That's what it is.
Yeah, I was about to say, yeah, it's a library of libraries, because, like, some of the other ones included in the Mahabharata are, like, make the Bhagavad Gita look like a pamphlet.
Yeah. Oh, so one thing I do have to say, since we got the stream turned on now.
Yeah, so we're still in, like.
I'm glad I found out I was right.
We found out while the stream was going, so, like, that's already in the video after you left. Like, we included it. Because we're like, yeah, 100% right. And then I found that eSword program, and we were able to slightly not as good as last week's. Your pour last week was better. Like, all the foam on one side got pulled away in this one.
Yeah, this one's not quite contrasty enough. But it's good.
I mean, as long as it's tasty, I don't care about the appearance. That's the one thing, like, I always, like, hated about that people.
Well, that's the way. The appearance never makes it taste better, right? But the appearance is an indication that you have well-foamed milk. So it's a good goal to achieve, but it doesn't
Well,
affect the taste.
or a bad cup as far as visual could indicate that the person doesn't have the pour skills to pull that shit off.
I
Yeah.
don't have those. But I'm
Well,
working
you're
on it.
yeah, but you're just developing them. Like, whereas to me, it's like if it tastes good, it's good. Like, as a chef, I did that too, where people are like, "Oh, it's all about the presentation," as they're pulling out their fucking tweezers and microgreens and shit, and I'm like, "Get away from me!" And they're like, "What do you mean?" And I'm like, here's my presentation," and I show them like the difference in char on a piece of steak between what they do and what I do, and things like that. And they're like, "But you're not really doing anything different," and I'm like, "Really?" Because the guests seem to think so. Because like the presentation for me, it's all about the flavor. They will eat something that looks like fucking dog food and call it the most beautiful meal they've ever eaten if it tastes good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, to me, the present, like, if I'm getting good latte art, that means that it's good texture when it's in my mouth. It's going to have good mouth feel.
I fucking hate you.
Uh,
Fucking hate you. It's called texture. You used the right word the first time.
Mouthfeel. I
no,
love
but
it.
I remembered that you hated words, so
I know. Well, it's just because it's like it makes us sound like cavemen, and it was a word that was created by influencers who didn't have the vocabulary to know the word texture also applied to liquid.
Yeah. But anyway, if you have good latte art, then that means you're going to have that good texture, right?
Yeah.
Whereas you cannot have good latte art and still have the good texture. That's fine. But you cannot have good latte art without good texture. Like
Now, the one thing you can get good latte art and good texture with and still fuck up is the flavor. Which is where I tended to run into the problem.
No, it's all about
Our baristas
I mean, latte art is all about texture.
yeah, our baristas like they cared more about the art than the taste. So I'd get a really beautiful cup that then tasted like it'd been boiled for 17 hours, like that kind of crap.
Burnt for 17 hours.
Yeah.
Hey, does the pinky rule apply to coffee, or is it just tea?
That's a British thing. You'd have to ask them. My pinkies naturally pop out when I grab like a mug or something like that, unless I four-finger grab it because of my broken. Well, no, I've broken my hand so often.
Well, it makes me balance. Right? It makes you less likely to spill the cup, supposedly.
Well, here's a major question: does it feel comfortable to do it?
Yeah.
Do whatever feels.
Then who gives a fuck?
But it also feels comfortable not to do it. Like, it's still the thing.
Well, see, for me, it's for like that one. I couldn't do like my pinky would pop out with that mug every time because there's no place for me to lock my pinky in. And my pinky kind of functions almost like a robot. It has like stages where it will lock through, like it doesn't smoothly move.
Right.
So like it's gonna pop out because otherwise I have to force it in, and that actually takes effort. And that's not a Pepsi. That's a Pepsi Zero. It's not even a diet Pepsi. Although that's interesting. Big 600. Like that. Is that one of those medical Pepsi Zeros? Because I've never seen that.
No, it's just 600 milliliter.
Oh, okay.
They've upped some of the sizes here. I don't know.
Americanizing. As we're going smaller, you guys are going back to the bigger crap. Just wait, you'll have big boobs before soon.
You can get Cokes now for that have 700s. So.
I mean, honestly, like everyone makes the really fucked up jokes about the nukes with Japan. For me, it's not. What we fucked up was we gave you guys our culture. Like honestly, that's because like
some of it, yeah.
you know how many people in your country are Americanophiles. Like, it's way too fucking many.
There's actually a group of people called Texaboos.
I didn't need that knowledge in my head, but thank you.
Basically, people that wear Western wear and go to a Japanese version of an American honky tonk.
Well, see, okay,
Have you been to Americatown?
No.
Americatown, I think it's somewhere near Tokyo. I went there last time I was in Japan. It was amazing. Not only, but of course, I'm sure you're familiar with this phenomenon, but it's got everything American in there, right? Because that's the whole theme of it, right? But everything's out of context. That makes no sense.
Yep.
Like the shirts with English words in them, but they don't say anything. Yeah. I'm sure it's the other way around. I'm sure it's the same way the other way around. I'm sure shirts with Japanese script on them.
Well, no, you just go to tattoo parlors. That's all. I go to tattoo parlors and read what they actually have on there, and then I laugh incessantly.
I knew this going in, which is why I translated the Japanese that's on the back of my neck my goddamn self, because I know that when that happens constantly, because it's a bunch of people who don't speak Japanese putting Japanese characters on you.
Lost in Translation is one of my favorite movies.
Yep.
Because it's just constant misunderstanding between people. It's really great.
Okay. We're not getting you cursed, unfortunately.
It's too bad.
Yeah.
And I'm
he's
just
got kid
about
watching. I'm half tempted to say, just send the kids in. We'll have them read, but no. Like, can't do that. First of all, no kids on a stream like that. Second of all, like, it's also like, you know, he'd be distracted and not enjoying himself, and that would detract from him.
Right.
Now.
Yeah. Anything that's interesting that comes up, that someone else shows up later, we can always say, hey, we read this like cantos ago. We wanted your thoughts on it or something.
Yeah, like I told Beckett he really needs to make it for next week if he can, because next canto, like there's like a couple of tercets he needs to read in his South African British Irish voice.
Oh right.
And
yeah,
then
that's something else.
After we finish, we give him the third chapter of the Eye of Argon.
Maybe we need a stereotypical Italian
Not
accent.
again. He already covers enough cringe. Do not give him that book. Don't do it. For those of you in
telling
chat
you right
who
now.
don't know, this is probably the worst book ever written.
It's won that award like 9 times.
If it is not the worst book ever written, that's because the worst book ever written hasn't survived history. Oh God!
All I'm gonna say is he said, if you pay me money, I will read whatever you give me on stream.
Remember, you forget. I was there. I remember.
I know.
This.
As long as it wasn't TOS, he'd read it. And I said, I'm your Huckleberry.
yeah, you did. Oh Jesus! And what's sad is, it is still the most cringe thing I've heard come out of his channel. And last night I heard something that I never thought I would ever hear. X-Men, Transformer, Holocaust, fan fiction. Where the main character is a nurse taking care of Eric Lencher in the concentration camp after Shaw kills his parents, and then gets injected with a spark and is being poisoned by Energon. Yeah, that's kind of the face I made too, as this was read out. I'm like, wait, what the fuck did you just say? What kind of fanfic did you just say?
This is so bad. Now I have to hear it.
Let's just put it this way.
Well, actually, Holocaust and X-Men kind of makes sense, right? Because of Magneto's past.
Well, yeah, but how the fuck do you get Transformers into it?
Yeah, that's going a step further.
It'd be like eating chips. suspense is terrible. I hope it'll last.
Well, but here's the other thing. Well, here's the other thing. All of that information I just gave you was in 4 paragraphs.
This is terrible, and the portions are too small.
Well, it's like I can only imagine what the longer treatises of this shit. This was just the way that it was described in like the blurb by the author.
Right.
They also have another fanfic that's a word I can't say without potentially getting the channel in trouble. But is similar to the Holocaust. Those particular that particular individual group, Brony, Stanford Prison Experiment fanfic.
Wait, hold on. A word that you can't say?
It can get us in trouble and potentially like demonetized to say the N word. No, the N word associated with World War II.
Oh,
like,
okay,
because we're live, like, if I was editing this, I'd just beat
I thought you were going to say Holodomor or something.
No.
I was like, how would that be?
No, it's just because that particular word, it basically, anytime it appears in the transcript, a bot can auto-flag it, is pretty much what it boils down to. And because I am an insignificantly small channel, that means I'm probably going to be relegated to automated controls as opposed to a person. And I'd rather just not take the risk.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
Because, like, I don't know if it's just demonetized, which we're not monetized, and therefore it wouldn't matter anyways, or if it's, like, this actually, like, starts counting as strikes against your channel, because I noticed even big channels, like, worry about this.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But that Brony Stanford Prison Experiment fanfic.
Right.
And for those of you who don't know what Brony is, don't look it up. Save yourself. I am happy that you don't know. Please don't look it up.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of an old term now.
No, it's an internet term that I am glad that most people outside of the internet don't know. And I would prefer that it be one of those terms relegated to history. Like, it ends up essentially being the equivalent of leet speak in 20 years, and this horrible group fucking disappears.
When I first started coaching, like, the younger kids, I had to get used to the idea that the references they don't catch, like, the references they would catch, like, expire way sooner than what I was used to with high schoolers. So, like, even things that just happened a couple of years ago, they're like, what? I'm still not used to that. Because high schoolers, you know, by the time they're on the debate team, they're like 10th or 11th grade or something. Typically, you don't get them until 10th grade because they don't know about debate freshman year. And so by the time they're in 10th grade, they've at least done some Wikipedia deep dives, so they get references even if it's before their time. But if you're like a 7th grader, then you don't get anything.
Well, it's also a slight difference of perspective. Like, think about back to when our old asses were kids, Rich. Like, at 7th, 8th grade, we would have had a much higher perception of, like, the world than even the internet allows these kids. Not because we would have had access to greater information, but because we would have been forced to engage with very particular information in a very particular way that would have allowed for
a lot of kids our age
knowledge.
had something called an encyclopedia, which was a big help. And if I was bored, I would just read it cover to cover. I don't think any kid would do that now because there's too many distractions. Like, the key word there was if you get bored, right? You cannot get bored today. If you have a smartphone, you cannot get bored. That's the problem with kids, is that they get curious when they're bored. And so, like I was a terrible reader in 5th grade, couldn't read, and way behind. And then one summer, the summer between 5th and 6th grade, I got super bored. So I just started picking up, because we didn't even have cable at my house. And so I just started picking up books off the shelf. And by the end of the summer, I was reading at an 11th grade level. So, like, it was purely because of boredom that got me out of my like reading issues.
Well,
And
but there's
today,
also
no kid can be that bored. They're just gonna play games.
partially you're accurate with that, but with today they don't get bored. But also with you, because I've known you for so long, I have this sneaky suspicion it was you had horrible teachers when it came to reading, because you probably had teachers like mine, which would just do it.
Yeah, I was in Texas.
They didn't explain anything further. It was just go do your reading.
Well, to be fair, like if you've got 25 kids in a room, it's going to be hard to give that sort of individuated attention.
Well, still,
And
but just do your reading is horrible advice.
and also right, and also like you're still learning to read until fourth grade, right? So I'm sure
Usually.
this is something that Sensei could tell you way more expertly than I could.
Actually, you're
But when
probably
you
continuing to learn to read until college, because you're still learning like growing
yeah, but what
vocabulary and shit like that.
no, I'm talking about your primary methodology of learning, right? So from third grade, in theory, you're learning, and in fourth grade, you're reading to learn. Everything flips, and so you don't typically dyslexia isn't caught until fourth grade, because when you're learning to read, you're engaging your frontal lobe, and you're expected to engage your frontal lobe because you're still learning, right? But when you're reading to learn, then the automated systems that are in the back of your brain are what's supposed to decode, and you're engaging your frontal lobe to learn the material that's in it, right? Like the way a lot of people will tell you, like most people, when you're reading, it's like watching a movie, right? It just the story appears to you, and the reading sort of disappears to you. But if you're dyslexic, that's not how it works. And so, at least not until you finish reading, learning to read. And so I hadn't finished learning to read yet because I didn't have enough practice in, and I was dyslexic. And so, starting in fourth grade, I started falling behind because I just didn't. I could read something, I could decode it because I was using my frontal lobe to decode, but had no idea what I was reading. Like I wasn't paying attention to the story because I was paying too much attention to trying to suss out the words. And by fifth grade, it had gotten bad enough to where I hated being called on, like to read next. And then again, like I said, over the summer, I was just bored, and so I just picked up books just because I was bored. And that's, in my case, that's what fixed it. I'm not saying that would fix it for everybody. Like everyone has a different like way of getting to a solution or whatever. I would never throw a whole bunch of books at a kid and say, "Just read." Like
Well, that was my teacher. In fact, when they
Yeah.
realized that I read at an advanced level, just because of the way like my vocabulary kicked in, skipping grade, like all that, they'd hand me
Right.
books that didn't even appear on the syllabus. They'd hand me just random shit, and I'm like, you aren't testing me on this. You don't know if I'm reading it. Like I even said this to one of my teachers, Mr. Weinstein was his name, actually, funnily enough. And I was like, dude, like, you aren't. Have you read this? And he's like, well, no. I'm like, well, why the hell? I'm being more exasperated now. But I was like, well, then why are you having me read it? He's like, because if I don't give you something to read, everybody goes to your desk to ask for help with the work. So
Yeah.
he was literally giving me busy work in reading.
Well, it is true. Like I do give kids stuff to read that I'm not reading myself, but only because, like, uh, you know, everyone picks their own individual material that they're interested in or whatever. This is when I teach English, which I don't right now, but that's what I would do. And so, like, I would have a whole lot of, a lot of teachers do this. You have 20 minutes of silent reading time or whatever, and you just keep a bookshelf like in the room so people can have a book to read. And a lot of those are books I hadn't read.
Oh, well, but here's the
So I
thing.
do. Yeah.
That would be like individuated reading time that you're not tested on.
Right.
It would be told that it's individuated reading time, etc. Whereas this was, he was giving me work.
And you
Like,
do a
it
book
was-
report on it,
Yeah, but that was the thing. He was doing this just to busy me. Because he knew
Yeah.
I read faster than any of the other kids in the class, because 9 times out of 10 before I came to class, I had already read the book that we were reading. Like, so it was like, not only have I already read it, now I'm reading through something I've already read, but it's like, I can, with the way my memory works, like, if I really get into a story, I can damn near recite it to you.
Yeah.
1 or 2 readings, usually, it gets to that point if I really enjoy it. Give me a bucket.
Well, speaking of reading,
Yes.
you want to read some Dante?
Yes, sir. Getting to that point.
Are we ready for that? Guess see what happens.
I got you the files in the group
Oh,
chat.
yeah.
So we're all pulling from the same one. It's Longfellow on the left, which is actually articulable.
Let me get there.
Oh, crap. Something messed up. Oh, wait, no, there it is.
I was thinking if we wanted to do parallel, like side by side stuff, we could put a bunch of stuff in a Google sheet as well.
Well, no, next time I can line it up better. Like, this is just because the way that it copy and pastes out of Sayers and the way that it copy and pastes out of Longfellow are different. One was actually produced to be a digital medium, so everything is like perfect, the punctuation, everything is there. Whereas because Sayers is a word scrubbed from a scanned document, there are certain things that screw up. So, like, next time, if I do this as images as opposed to copy and pasted text, what I can do is I can sit there and essentially use, like, alignment lines and actually line up each line of text and resize it to fit that line, etc., to where it would actually sit and line up truly side by side. Whereas occasionally, even though this will always be, like, one-to-one lines, every once in a while they get misaligned because of the way that this thing copy and pasted. It's just weird.
Yeah. Is there a way for us to like make small corrections to these?
Hold on a second. Wrong button.
Let's see.
This.
I'm trying to do better by cleaning up my coffee station at the end, so I don't have to do it the next day.
Okay, so here is the primary document as opposed to the exported PDF.
It's just small, like it said MB instead of me on line 3 and 4.
No, I understand that, and that's what I'm saying. It's one of these things where it is, I don't understand, because, like, there were things that I would see changed that on the page look right, but for some reason when you text scrub it, it comes up wrong.
Right.
Well,
I can see on E and a B might look similar to, character recognition software.
Yeah, like I said, it's just weird, because there's things that just, there are certain things that happened where, like, capitalization and punctuation and things would change for no reason. Like, I don't understand it. Like I said, that's for later though. Like, next week I'll do it via images. It'd be no big deal. So who wants to start with the first red section?
I can do it.
All right, go ahead, Destiny. You get to read
Through me.
So famous line that everybody knows from this story and mythology.
Through me is the way to the city dolent. Through me is the way to the city, to eternal dole. Through me, the way among the people lost. Justice incited my sublime creator, created me divine omnipotence, the highest wisdom and the primal love. Before me, there were no created things. Only etern and I eternal last. All hope abandon, ye who enter in.
Slight adaptation of the mythological line, but dude, like, that was why I was hoping certain people would be here for this week, because, like, we got to get to the most famous line of this entire damn book, and most of Greek mythology.
Which is sad that that's the most famous one, but oh well.
Yeah.
not
Well,
really.
most people didn't read past this.
Okay, that part is
Well,
sad.
it's
But
also
what I was
like
gonna say is
people don't even read outside of the Inferno, right? Like people just think of Dante's Inferno. They don't think of the other two.
okay,
Yeah.
on that part I'll agree. That's
Teachers
sad.
abandon their students in hell, and they never get out.
No, on that part I'll agree because that part is sad. But what I was going to get at is, to me, it's not sad that this is the most famous line because of like the parallel importance both in mythology, this story, and others, including modern adaptations of ancient myths and stuff like that, like Percy Jackson, etc., where the Clash of the Titans, so on, where this has become one of the most iconic through lines of history. So, like, it being the most famous when it hits from so many different points in history as opposed to just ancient times, like, that makes sense to me. Whereas, like,
Hmm.
Dante, outside of religious circles, most people don't even understand what purgatory is, so, like, the idea of a whole book on purgatory is just going to be lost on them. And,
Well, today.
yeah. Well, and that's what I
or
mean.
they may or they may consider it heretical.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, and this is all opinion. It's like, so it makes sense to me that now I'll say the actual original line, which is abandon all hope, he who entered here. Like that's one of those things. It has been paraphrased. It has been reused in so many different mediums in so many different ways. I mean, like we have had albums based around that one line. Whole albums
They-
from groups.
I'm pretty sure they used it in the Pirates of the Caribbean as well.
Yeah, for Tortuga.
Yep.
And that's what I'm getting at. So it's like, that makes sense to me. So that's not sad at all. Because to me, that's just kind of like a throughput of history, like actually showing that this was a really important idea. That the idea of having to abandon hope at certain times to get something accomplished was like something that humans have been grappling with since ancient times.
Yep.
Oh, I wouldn't say that's the reason for the signage though. I'd say
No.
the opposite.
No, I'm saying
I'd
that's
say-
why the throughput of history, not what the signage means.
Because yeah, I think what the signage is saying is that you're not going to get anything done ever. Like that's done. You're abandoning hope.
Well,
That reason.
once you get to the Dante portion of it, yes. When you're going to the Greek myth portion of it, no. And that's my point. As you go through the throughput of history, that's the part we've been grappling with, which is why I think like each generation that hears it grabs onto it, because it's that juxtaposition in their head that just makes them go, wait, why would you have to abandon hope? Like they like it's that not thought stopping, but it is like a thought cliff where they're suddenly going, do I want to make that jump? like that so they have to take a minute. That I think that's why it persists in that way, and it's not sad that that's the most famous.
I think it's worth talking about the Odyssey here because Odysseus does go to hell, and this is not something Dante's aware of, so this isn't going to affect this
No.
poem. But he goes to hell, and he encounters spirits there, and they have also abandoned hope. Odysseus wants to get favors from them. These are his former friends, and even they like want something in exchange. They want blood, like from Odysseus and from his friends or whatever. But those shades, they have no hope of getting out of their predicament where they are, and all they really do is express regret for how they lived their lives. That's it, which is pretty much what happens. I wouldn't, if I didn't know better, because I know that Dante did not read Homer, but if I didn't know better, I would have thought that he was inspired by that part of the Odyssey because it's a very similar sort of experience. His experience with the shades goes down to Hades.
Yeah, no, I can see that. For me, it would be less that inspiration, more the inspiration of the stories that succeeded it. Because, again, this is a concept that has been used through what would have been contemporary literature for Dante, Kind of en masse, because at this particular time period, people were obsessed with the Greek mythology and adapting it into new stories and stuff like that. Like,
Yeah,
tons
they
of
were
authors
obsessed with
did
Greek
it.
mythology, and the ultimate source for them would have been the Aeneid because they didn't have Homer, so Virgil was the next best thing,
Yeah.
and that's why Virgil is so important in this poem. But
Yeah.
yeah, for sure, yeah.
Oh yeah, and
And
that
Tying this,
author, that author that we found last night before signing out, Rich, we're gonna have to do that too, because a parody of Virgil. Oh, dude, we gotta read that, especially a parody of Virgil by a Bolshevik fucking commissar. Like, that's something we gotta read.
yeah,
so
sure.
the one thing I was going to say is that like tying this to like an East Asian perspective, you
Mhm.
see more of hope lost in a Chinese version of hell than you do the Japanese version, which is interesting because the Japanese version of hell involves what is it with Buddhist influence. Basically, if you live, what is it? If you do something good, that's gonna like raise you up the rank. There are like 6 levels. So
Right.
there's like there's like not god status, but kind of like a god-esque status. Then there's
Hmm.
like the Bodhisattva status, which is like people like mystic people that have special powers. Then there's the human plane, the animal plane, the yokai spirit monster plane, and then there's the demon plane.
Right.
So like that's different, but in like the Chinese hell, basically you die over and over again, and depending on what bad thing you did, you get a particular hell because of that.
Yeah,
You know,
that
like
makes sense.
you
Yeah.
know, like the joke from Firefly where he's like, "This is a special part of hell reserved
Right.
specifically for what is it?
People who talk in the
People who
cinema.
talk in the theater, right? Like, there's a
Yeah.
Chinese hell for that."
Yeah, I had there's a friend of my family who I just remembered this who wrote her own version of Dante's Inferno, and
Hmm.
with 21st century or whatever it was 20th century, um, like equivalents. And one of them was the place for doctors, and it was a waiting room,
Yep.
and they just waited for eternity.
Uh, um, yeah, that's actually something I considered, like, after I got done writing some of these things I've worked on, is like going and doing stuff like this, and I'm just like, I am not a poet, first of all, so there's no way I could do it as an epic. Second of all, like, if I were to write this, like, as a novel, how many times has this story been done? Like, honestly, like, how many ways can you actually do this story and not end up like repeating yourself? And the thing is because I haven't read every version that people have adapted this, how many other people am I going to inadvertently end up copying because of the finite like confluence of ideas for something like
You have to be
this?
committed. It's like you're talking about like a comprehensive take on basically right versus wrong, like a whole moral system you're building up. So it's not a small task, you know.
Yeah, I wrote a political theory book for that. It's not like, and I don't think I could change that book into an epic poem if I wanted to.
Yeah.
I don't think I have that skill.
Or it just it takes a it might take a lifelong commitment. You know what I mean? Like a
No,
lot of
I
effort.
honestly just don't think I have the skill. Quit yelling at me, you shithead cat. It's not that I honestly just do not believe I would have the skill necessary, because the idea of trying to like take something that dramatically complicated and effectively communicate everything about it while also staying within like a highly like structured format of right. Like
Have multiple levels of interpretation at every line too.
yeah, like imagine trying. Just imagine you write, you read, you do a lot of this stuff. Both of you, you guys have both read portions of that book. Just imagine trying to like reinterpret the first page into iambic pentameter, for example. Like, it's just like,
I've done it, and not with Dante, but I've done it with like smaller works, and it's hard.
yeah, and that's what I mean. Like, I just don't think I have the skill. I know
You
I
could
don't
you
have
could
the impulse.
agonize for hours on a single line as to whether or not you should emphasize the metrical pattern versus the meaning versus the rhyme, and you have to
Well,
prioritize them.
well, Jack, I think we found your Chinese hell.
Um,
Yeah.
no, actually, if you wanted that, you'd put me someplace with a food with no flavor. But, like, if you really wanted to fuck with me, like having to eat like bland,
Might be as your
young.
Chinese purgatory.
Yeah, think of it as bland, young
There's-
tofu as my version of Chinese hell. Bland young tofu with nothing with it. No accompaniment, no drink, no condiments, no sides. Just that for eternity. That would be hell to me.
It's funny that you mentioned. I think I don't know if we talked about this before, but I think it's funny. It's funny that you mentioned that it's like purgatory is, that a lot of Protestants would consider it heresy. But when you talk to individual people who would say that purgatory is heresy, they will like talk about some sort of dynamic afterlife. People like improving after they're dead or whatever, not realizing that by definition what they're describing is purgatory.
Well, but
Yeah.
I think this
The
comes
idea
from the
that
aspect of Protestants.
Their atheist grandfather who died must be in hell now and has no chance of getting to heaven. Well, if there's a purgatory, there's a chance, right? But if there's not a purgatory, then no, your grandfather's in hell forever. And a lot of them would say, "Oh, I'm praying for him. Like, I hope he's in heaven." But no, that praying for him doesn't do anything unless there's some mechanism through which some mountain to climb that will get you from one place to the other.
Well, at least to my understanding, the actual issue here would be because going through that eSword program I sent you, Jesus, all of the stuff that like the extra commentaries that you don't have access to as a non-scholar usually is freaking great. Like it's the fact that much like myself, it's that they think it's not a different place. They believe it would be the
You don't believe in purgatory at all. Place, metaphor, whatever. You're not supposed to believe in it at all. If you're in hell, you're in hell forever, and there's no getting.
They don't like the word. You're right, but as you talk to them, because they do believe in improvement from hell because of certain scripture that indicate that you can be saved from hell.
Right.
So to them, it is not a place. It is. Therefore, when you say purgatory, they're thinking location, and that's why it's heresy. But when
it's not just that, but I'm just saying, you are right that they're willing to abandon that belief, right? If there's some individual motivation, right? Motivated reasoning is big, right? And in these churches,
it's actually taught in many of these churches, but yes,
these churches will often tell you whatever it is it takes to keep you there, right? So if they get the sense that believing that you're dearly departed is not in hell, it will keep you coming to church every week, then that's what they'll tell you.
I mean, some of these commentaries that are talking about this go all the way back into the 17 and 1800s, so this isn't a new concept. This is all the way back, like, right after the Reformation.
Motivated reasoning is not new either.
Well, no, I'm just saying, so it's like, all I'm saying is, I don't think it's necessarily quote-unquote motivated reasoning today. I think some of it is dogmatic today, whereas originally why it crept in, it was motivated reasoning. Does that make sense? Because like some of these people, they don't think of it as motivated reasoning. They're actually taught that.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I agree. But it was dogmatic then, and it's dogmatic now. It's just that.
Okay, on that part, I agree.
These evangelical churches are a little bit more flexible in what they believe, right? Like they've had so many. from their original split from the Catholic Church, or from you could argue. I mean, you could argue that the Orthodox Church was the original and the Catholic split off, whatever. But whichever way you look at it, there have been so many splits since then that, especially if you're in one of those non-denominational churches, those are the ones that have finally realized that they're going to keep splitting forever, so they might as well just not even claim a denomination and then just like change their thinking every week. And those are the ones where the dogmatism is sort of more flexible, or it's actually these days it's more trying to adapt to like conservative Republican ideology than it is any particular like authentic like take on the Bible. So when I was growing up, even just 40 years ago, there were people who like believed one thing religiously, right? But it sort of conflict with their politics, and they kind of had to wrestle with it. Today, they've done so much adaptation of politics with their religion that I don't think it's
I
as
mean,
much of an issue
the
anymore.
prosperity gospel does exist.
That's true. The prosperity gospel actually is much older than me.
Yeah.
So yeah, that project's been going on for a long time. Yeah, amazing. And yet, when I have conversations with other Christians, I have to remind them that this new way of thinking is only at most 200
Hmm.
years old, and Christianity is 10
It's
times
not,
that
well, it's not
age.
even that. It was what is it? What is it? 1870s. 1870s is when the
Actually,
what
no,
is it? The fun.
we could track this back before the fundagelicals. Actually, it's like these commentaries and histories are great. Actually, you can blame Joseph fucking Smith for this in 1830. That's when this shit started creeping in. 1832 to be precise. And since then, it was adapted by the fundagelicals who didn't like the rest of the Mormon shit of you get your own planet and crap. And all the other crap that he came up with. But
And special underwear.
Yeah,
Don't forget the underwear.
But they took the fundagelical
Special
part
shorts.
from them. Yeah, like that's when you can actually trace this back, because several of the people who started the fundamentalist movement are former Mormon converts.
Yeah.
So you can go a little bit further back and blame this one on Joseph Smith, Despy.
Okay, listen, this is one argument for the Catholic Church, right? When you have a central authority, it's a lot harder for all these hucksters to arise and like create their own fiefdom. At least we only have like one huckster, right, who's in charge of all of us.
Well,
We don't
depending
have
on the time period, we've had a couple of time periods where there were two of them at the same time.
All I'm just saying.
Puts three of them in hell. So
Yeah, all I'm gonna say is that I'm a big fan of having peer review and having things scrutinized heavily. And Mavericks in isolation is not necessarily the best way to go about things.
yeah, fundamentalism, by the way, started as a rejection of peer review. That's what's interesting. There was something called higher criticism. It still exists. Higher criticism is just when you examine the Bible in a scientific way using the most cutting edge methods that are available, linguistic analysis, and comparing all of the different variations in transcripts and things like that, and putting it through a sort of critical analysis that will tell you more about like where it came from, what the point of view of the authors was. It helps you with the hermeneutics. And fundamentalists hated that because it revealed tons of contradictions. It revealed certain ideologies that are not present in Orthodox Christianity. It created all kinds of problems. And so they wrote a book. I've got it. It's in storage. I would bring it to show it to you right now. It's called The Fundamentals. It's a 3-volume set. And it's a whole bunch of, they look like academic papers, but it's basically just a whole bunch of papers arguing why we shouldn't criticize the Bible in this way. And that's where fundamentalism comes from. It's from that group of like papers.
Well, this is like the whole thing about like trying to make the Bible entirely inerrant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is a problem too, even with Catholic Church, because Catholic Church does believe in biblical inerrancy, because that goes back to
Yeah.
Nicaea.
Right.
But some of us, not all of us, because I have a theologian friend who doesn't agree with me here, but I am of the camp that believes that you can have inerrancy in the entire document without inerrancy in parts. So you don't have to have you don't have to believe that every single verse individually is inerrant.
We will
You
save
can
this
just
for
say-
after, but we are going to get into the 3 primary laws of logic into this after the reading. Just
Yeah.
to
Selective,
say.
selective inerrancy. Okay, that makes sense.
Well,
That-
he's meaning the overall message is inerrant.
I know. I
Inerrancy
know.
in the
I'm
whole-
kidding.
No, but this absolutely is a way for me to be a cafeteria Catholic. There's no
Yeah.
question.
Well,
about
but
that.
my problem is it violates both the law of non-contradicted middle and the law of identity. Like it literally violates both.
Well,
so-
okay. Here's my analogy, right? If we consider whole numbers to be perfect numbers and fractions of numbers to be imperfect, which is like a classical mode of thinking, then you could say that a whole number, like the number 10, is made up of 4.5 and 5.5. 4.5 is imperfect, 5.5 is imperfect, but 10 is perfect, right? So it's like that. You wouldn't take part of a perfect thing and then call that part necessarily perfect, right? That part could be incomplete without the rest of it. To me, if the Old Testament were already perfect and infallible, there would be no need for a New Testament, for example.
Well, I mean, like I said, we'll save that for after because, like, that's the whole thing.
Yeah.
All right. Are we going to get to the second?
Yeah. I was about to get to that now because otherwise, like that's the thing. Like once we get into that one, we're here for the next 2 hours just on that one. So we've only gotten to line 12.
And that 89 weeks is now going to go to 186 weeks.
Yeah. These words in somber. Oh, these words in somber color I beheld, written upon the summit of a gate. Whence I senses master hard to me. And he to me, as one experienced, here all suspicion needs must be abandoned, all cowardice needs be here extinct. We to be place have come, where I have told thee, thou shalt behold the people dolorous, who have forgone the good of intellect. And after he had laid his hands on me, with joyful mien, whence I was comforted, he led me in among the secret things. Their sighs, complaints, ululation sounds, resounding through the air without a star, whence I at the beginning wept thereof. But there yet, I hate that damn word. I always mispronounce
I could have sworn you said whence I was comfy.
Comfort.
No. That makes sense. That would be a legitimate translation.
Yes. Now, where Sayers disagrees here, and I actually see the thing is Sayers does certain things I really like, and other things where I'm like, what the fuck were you smoking when you translated this? But I actually prefer her version of this, which is he laid his hand on mine, and with a face so joyous that it comforted my quailing, into the hidden things he led my ways. Like that is a much better and more perfect transliteration to give us like the meaning of that tercet, whereas it feels like Longfellow was being very I won't say pretentious, but pedantic to try and stick as close to where the punctuation went in the original sentences in Italian, because it was just like he did things there that was just weird.
I was just gonna say, I just thought you liked the Sayers version because Sayers used lamentations.
Although I did watch Conan recently, no, it was he used ululation, which ululation does not have an adequate translation in Italian. So I do not understand how he translated from Italian to ululation when Italian does not have a proper translation of that word in itself. Like, like they almost use it like we do with certain words, where they just copy it letter for letter, as opposed. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like I don't understand how he got to that because it's not in the original text, and that's what I mean. It's like it was like he was trying to fit within a certain um, syllabic arch, and within a certain punctuation framework, and he picked words that would fit that as opposed to actually translating for that one. And it seems like Sayers ran into the same problem, and she instead went for get the meaning there. So I like the way that Sayers did it better here, because the way that Longfellow did it is very cumbersome. Like, like I'm not the greatest reader, but that's a cumbersome fucking set of lines to read with the way that it's punctuated.
He always sounds cumbersome to me. Like that's his default.
Less so
It's
for
like
me.
reading Chomsky. I mean,
He's very much like favors style more than meaning alone. I'm not saying he abandons meaning, but I think often when the two conflict, he'll go for style.
That part I don't disagree with, but at the same time, it's not usually laborious to read him, and that one really was. Like, I'm sitting there going like, why that word? Or why did you use mean here as opposed to with a face so joyous? Like, that just, like... Sorry. It's just one of those things where it's like... He cut a particular way of wording it that made more sense with the way that Sayers did it. To give one that, again, only two things that seem to make sense because the punctuation is in the same exact spot, is that he was trying to do it based on just basically filling in the blanks of what he was removing. And like that's just weird thing to do when you're translating between two distant languages, first of all, but second of all, two languages, one where they constantly put multiple meanings into a singular word, or a singular word can mean an entire like multi-paragraph concept, into something like English, which is very descriptive, and you would have to go into greater explanation for that singular word. Like, it just... How can you do that? It just makes no sense to me. And it really, it hit the choke point at that paragraph, in my opinion. Right there on lines 26 through 28.
Yeah.
Now, getting to the meaning of what's being put here is like, haven't gotten the name yet, but like we're dealing with the gatekeeper and the boatman at this point. This is like the site of that, I should say. So like this is Dante truly getting like the first concept of what he's getting into. Virgil at this point has given him hope. This is where true dread truly comes into his heart, because like it says that he has to be comforted away from the Longfellow version, away from the ululations and this and all, and the lack of stars within the sky. So like he is going through a very discordant situation of like entering a world that he has never even dreamed possible, after just being given hope from being saved from a previous world he had never dreamed possible. So like like this is an extreme juxtaposition for our protagonist here.
Yeah. Also, one last thing on mean, like, keep in mind, like, he's not a 21st century American, so he's gonna be using words that made more sense back then than they do now. Like, it's just anachronistic to us. And also, and this is the thing, this is my only issue with, or my main issue with him, is he's going to use words that are anachronistic to his own time as well. So he's not just going to use 19th century language. He's probably going to use 18th century language.
Um,
Actually, he'll go back to 16th century. Like he likes Shakespeare too, and he
yeah,
finds
I was about to say he goes all the way back into 16th and even occasionally 15th century English. So yeah, like you're not wrong there.
yeah.
Um,
So I think that's too right. It's really mean. You can hear the word mean in demeanor, right? Which, and we know what demeanor means today, right? So mean. That's all it means is that with joyful visage or joyful demeanor or joyful
yeah,
appearance.
and that's what I mean. Like there were other words even contemporary to his own language that would have made more sense. You just used one. Visage would have worked. This is definitely a word that he uses a absolute shit ton in other shit he does.
Well,
So,
this was common for his day. I don't know about me. I haven't read enough of that.
well,
But
I'm not saying that mean is anachronistic. I'm just saying it feels
right.
forced as opposed to because it
He
seems
probably just needed a one syllable word
that's what I mean.
for
It
the meter.
seems like he was trying to either fit into the meter or he was
Yeah.
trying to fit into the punctuation because, like I said, if you look at the Italian, punctuation is the same exact spot.
Right.
And that's just weird to me when you go. I mean, you've done enough translation from Greek to English. Latin languages aren't much different. Like punctuation usually changes. There's usually more words between them, or less depending on the portion you're dealing with. But it never usually lines up one to one.
Well, the trouble is, those languages and Italian as well, uh, just like Spanish, they do a lot of their conjugation through the ending of words instead of through the order of words. So you've got more flexibility in those languages than you do in English.
Uh huh.
So to bring it into English, like you can't really do all the puns, you can't do all the
At
parallelisms.
least
Like there's a lot.
not as easily. No.
But if you were translating this into Spanish, you could probably keep a lot of that.
Oh yeah, that's why I'm saying distant languages because like Latin to Latin language would be probably fairly easy. I'm not going to say it's going to be easy because I'm betting it's probably just as complicated.
I'm sure
just in a
Italian
different
would be
way.
pretty easy. Yeah,
But
I mean, compared.
it's gonna be a lot easier than say trans. Read that last tercet in Japanese, Despy. Like it's gonna be a little weird, I'm guessing, trying to translate
Yeah.
between two such distant languages.
If you could do it on the fly, you should work for the UN.
Also true. But more my point is like he just thought about it like as I asked him that he's like, oh shit, like, and I'm guessing like the more distant the language, the more this becomes an issue.
Yeah, sure.
I would say like even languages that are under the same family, like even Latin-based languages, like going from Portuguese to Spanish would probably was easy. Probably going from like Spanish to French is easy, and then going from French to Italian is easy. But going from Portuguese directly to Italian would probably be a lot more difficult.
In translation or in spoken word? Because I'm guessing, like, spoken word, this is going to be a slightly different metric as well.
It really depends. There's a lot of words that that because of like geographical location make it like easier for certain language groups to have like commonality. But when you're too far apart from each other, especially with how languages like progress, you can see like major differences.
Well, no, I mean, that part I understood. I was just thinking that maybe spoken word would follow a slightly different metric because of the fact that, at least in the Latin-based languages, a majority of the vowels are pronounced the same way, so on and so forth, which then at least makes
Well,
it easy to pronounce, even if you then have to learn the words. It's not like you're having to learn how to repronounce all of this shit.
right, but there's certain words that like I wish I knew Latin better, but there would be like a word for, let's just say, complaints that would be in Spanish, but French decided to use a completely different word to mean that exact same word
Right.
in in French that is more locally colloquially known than in Spanish.
Okay, I get you.
Right. France probably had like more Visigothic invaders than Spain did,
Right.
and Spain had more Moors.
Yeah,
There's,
more leech influence within to
so there's
the.
going to be more borrowed words from other languages, and even borrowed like grammatical concepts.
Right. I mean, like you could have like a word that's like a 1-to-1 translation in Spanish that's like complaints, and what is it like? I say this jokingly, but the word that they use for complaints is another word that's associated that people that hold their nose up.
Yeah, haughty.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's something like that, but it's not something that directly translates to
Or even
to
like
Spanish.
in English, turning your nose up at something just means to refuse a thing. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
I reject a thing, which makes sense. A complaint would be to
Mm-hmm.
reject whatever service that you're rejecting. Yeah.
Right. So I mean, like even doing that sometimes can really confuse people.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I should have taken that into account because we have that issue even just within English.
Yeah. I mean, like in all honesty, I'll tell you this right now. Second language learners in English absolutely hate phrasal verbs. Absolutely hate them with a passion. They would rather just use a one-word translation instead of using any phrasal verb.
I can see that.
Got it.
Yeah,
Like to see
like
what
when
they
I was
think of
taking Greek,
superlatives.
I
Mhm.
went straight from taking Spanish to taking Greek. Like I didn't do the Latin that you customarily do in between. So I immediately had to go with like a language that isn't as connected to Spanish as Latin is, and also had to decline. And I'd never done
Mhm.
any kind of declination. Well, in Spanish, you decline for pronouns, but that's it.
Mhm.
So it was extremely difficult for me to like deal with any noun,
So,
which
like
nouns are
even
kind of important to language. If you don't
I mean,
understand nouns, you're
even
not
like
going to have a good time.
even like people like that speak Dutch, there's a lot of words that kind of like transfer over between Dutch and English.
Very much so.
Yeah, there's a lot of words, but the thing is that I tell you this right now, there's a lot of Dutch people that learn in English, they absolutely hate phrasal verbs.
My second cousin, he married a woman from Holland. Her name was Mari, and she was an English teacher. And I have heard that exact conversation in the fucking 1980s, Nesby. That's why I'm just sitting there going, yep. Yep. So yeah, like it is. We have in American English. I should say North American English because it also affects Canada as well. A more functional like approach to the language as opposed to artistic approach to the language, and that utilitarian mindset ends up overcomplicating when trying to translate into American English. It's still bad in British English, mind you, but it's less bad there,
Mm-hmm.
by a slight degree. And in the process of doing so, like other languages become clunky to Americans and vice versa.
Yep.
Because we just have a different mindset of how language is used as a tool. It's something that honestly I only broke out of. And I hate to give you this much credit right now, Rich, because you're gonna have that smug face when you turn back around. But was after reading Midsummer. Because I know how much you love Shakespeare, and I love railing against him. But it was at that point that I realized that the English language had lost something in the contemporary years since him. That other languages had sought to maintain. Never understood culturally why this shift happened, by the way. Like, I'm not a linguistic historian to understand this part. But
It had to do with politeness.
Hmm.
Like for instance, if one of the things you're thinking about is thee and thou and all that, thee and thou is singular. You is plural,
Hmm.
and you would normally use plural for people who are your betters in society. So, like for instance, we still do this with the queen, right? We would, she says, we are not amused, right? She's referring to herself in the plural because that gives her a certain amount of authority. And then you would use thee and thou for people who are below you or equal to you. And so what would happen is more and more people got the formal you in English as a result of politeness. We just didn't want people to think that we were looking down on them, so we would use the plural to refer to them. Until eventually we used the plural exclusively. And then we forgot about the and thou entirely.
well, I mean, this is getting into that part, but and that would be in like spoken word, and I agree on that part. But like, there's something else to it because we didn't just lose it in speech; we lost it
Yeah, no,
in the
that's
way
one.
yeah. But that's what I mean. Like,
Yeah.
I don't understand, like, because like some of this can't be tied directly to that politeness. Like that one, 100% can
Well,
be, but there has to be
so
like some other like contributing factor because it seems
I
to be around 1605 that this shift starts to happen. Go ahead, Jesse. I just wanted to get
there,
the year out.
here's the thing that I'm going to say, that even in the 1600s, media influence usually
Yeah,
has a very
yeah.
So this
big
is
influence on
newspaper.
language.
The Bible.
No, well, the Bible, but the 1600s is also the time period in which Restoration plays were all the craze,
Yep.
and therefore the people that
Uh,
spoke during
theater.
Restoration, like
Okay.
theater and whatnot, used these terms more often. And because people went to see these and they like to
Natural
imitate the
creep.
characters
Yeah.
and stuff that they liked, they're going to use that
So
language
pop culture
in
creep.
public. Basically,
No, no. I mean, not basically. That's exactly what it would be. I honestly, because this is also the time period when newspapers first started to be a thing, I figured that may have been it. But
hmm
the theater may actually be it since that was a form of entertainment and therefore would have had a greater influence creep than newspapers would have.
right. I mean, like you think about comics in essence, like what is it, like Marvel comics coming out? You have like Stan Lee, "Nuff said." Like it doesn't even
Excelsior.
have to be Excelsior. Basically, these things have influenced the culture these days. Comic book speak has influenced the way that we use language in the culture to this day. And these are things that they like created, and we still use them in regular
Yeah,
society.
no, I mean, it makes sense. I wasn't arguing. I'm just saying, like, I had put it to newspapers, but yeah, I didn't think about the Reformation plays because I had always attributed them to the later 1600s as opposed to the early 1600s.
Well,
And
you have a
therefore, like, when I saw the transition seem to start at 1605, like, I just didn't even think about popular culture. I thought, wait a minute, this is when the first newspaper got halfway around the globe. Like
mm-hmm.
that, like so, like that's why that seemed like significant to me. But
Well,
you're right,
the other
plays
thing is
probably
that
do more.
the the other thing is that like at this time period in which women were starting to be introduced to theater to actually like play parts of women in theater at the same time. Before it used to be exclusively men. So
What year
Restoration
did that
theater,
happen?
I don't remember the year, but it's right around the time of like the Restoration plays.
Okay. Yeah, I was just
So
curious
I mean,
because if this also happens back, this would be another one of those giant cultural shifts that would have dramatically changed it. Because now you're having to deal with the more neutral form of language due to dealing with both men and women, and therefore would also change the cultural creep based on the education medium.
not to mention when you're dealing with plays like this, you have the playwrights that are obviously writing the play, but the actors themselves have influence over how their character is written at the same time. So,
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like, I just haven't thought about that because, like I said, when I figured out newspaper, I got the blinders on after I saw that detail because I'm like, I mean, printed word has affected us so much at every other time. Why wouldn't it affect us when it's this thing? And then I just
hmm
didn't look further. So yeah, that's on me. Because that makes way more sense since we understand that pop culture creep quite literally is one of the most predominant mimetic nodes within American within human civilization, going back to as far as recorded history, where we can actually see certain traces of this in grammatical style choices of teachers teaching in the Babylonian schools teaching cuneiform. Like, we can actually see it all the way back to then. So, like, the fact that it was all the way back then when they were talking about that entertainment medium of how they're writing down the Anuba leash and all this other stuff, like, why wouldn't it continue into modern day? Like, that's my bad for not continuing. Because, like, if it goes all the way back to a language that we lost until, like, we found that one pillar, like, like, come on.
All right, Rich,
Yep.
you're up for the next section.
Oh, and he gets the fun
Okay.
part.
Before we start, I just want to ask you guys about this. Okay, so this is my coffee station. All right. You see these wires in the back, all right here.
Yeah.
Like, I want to figure out something to do with them. I was thinking about wrapping them in a black towel, and then I thought the next best thing, or whatever, a better idea I thought maybe would be black bamboo placemats that would kind of wrap around them.
No,
But this sounds like the sort of thing that they do in Japan all the time. There must be a you're aware of that would be.
No, we do this in kitchens too. It's essential. I forget what they're called now because we just order them by sight out of fucking magazines at the restaurants. But it's essentially a box that has a slot for the cords to go in, and it makes a shelf where all the cords hide under the shelf, and then you have a place where you can put like spices behind your coffee things, but all the cords are underneath. Like, it almost looks like a box with two sides missing. So the two sides that are missing sit up against the wall and the top of the counter. Like, I forget what they're called, but it essentially becomes a shelf as well.
That would be better than a placemat. Yeah, for sure. All right.
Yeah, just because then you could just like set a cup with a bunch of spoons or whatever, something that just that way it doesn't take up space elsewhere. Now it's sitting there, kind of thing.
Yeah, maybe those flavored syrups that people like to put in their coffee or something.
Like,
okay.
For me as a chef, I think like a couple of spoons for tasting, that kind of thing. Like, this is just the way I think. So, but Rich, as you get to you're going to be going 34 to 56.
Am I just doing the whole purple?
Yeah,
Yep.
I broke it into colors so that each section breaks into a consistent
I like that.
point, so that it's easy. Where it's like this is a good natural stopping point type thing. And all I can say is I'm sorry because this one's a pain in the ass to read.
So this is Longfellow on the left and
Sayers
Dorothy on the
right.
right?
Yep.
Okay. I like to call her Dorothy. Makes me feel closer to her. All right. Languages, diverse, horrible dialects, accents of anger, words of agony, and voices high and hoarse with sounds of hands, made up a tumult that goes whirling on forever in that air forever black, even as sand doth when the whirlwind breathes. And I, who had my head with horror bound, said, Master, what is it which now I hear? What folk is this, which seems by pain so vanquished? And he to me, this miserable mode maintained the melancholy souls of those who lived without infamy or praise. Commingled are they, that caitiff choir of angels, who have not rebellious been, nor faithful were to God, but were for self. The heavens expelled them, not to be less fair, nor them nethermore abyss receives, for glory none the damned would have from them.
Yeah, with hootin', I tripped over that word 15 times before I looked up how to fucking pronounce it. where you put without, it's with hootin'. That's why that en is there. It's an antiquated word. I had to look up the pronunciation.
Again, that's Longfellow.
Yeah. Now, very obvious what he's talking about here. The fall. Like, I just don't understand the reasoning behind it, because like when you get into the commentary, there's a lot of like everybody has a different opinion as to why these particular six tercets are here. Some of it is talking about like the arrogance, some of it's talking about the rebellion, and I'm like, I cannot understand the point to this other than to basically extend the dread we just saw in the last portion. You know what I mean?
Which part again? The dread of what?
Well, the last part, as the last section we read, the dread of he got hope from Virgil, and now he's getting the dread of seeing a world he had never imagined before, a world without star, ululations of the dead, so on and so forth. And like the only this just seems like an extension of that horror, as opposed to like anything like additive, because it like. We're talking about
there's all
when this was written, everybody knew the fall. Like, that was like, you're talking about one of the universal stories in Christendom that anybody, even the illiterate, would have known. Like, that's what I mean. Like, it just seems like a redundancy just to extend the horror.
Well, I mean,
It's
setting the mood.
yeah, but also like the mood. Yeah, we're at the part of hell that's closest to God, right? So that's why it's hence the word commingled, right? Commingled are they with that caitiff choir of angels who have not rebellious been. So there is. I don't want to say we're not absent of hope because we're past the sign that says to abandon hope, so hope is gone, right? But there are good things there where they are, right? And we'll find out at some point that it's the four cardinal virtues that can still live in this level of hell. You just don't have hope and faith and love. So yeah, the horrors are commingled with angels, right? The caitiff choir of angels. I guess they're close enough to heaven to where they can still sort of hear something of the angels. The choir.
Well, I mean, I understand that, but is that not in and of itself the horror? Especially when you're talking about the 14th century, where separation from God was hell.
Mm-hmm.
Like
yeah, it's almost like Tantalus. It was close enough to the
Yeah.
food that he wants and the drink that he wants, but he cannot.
And that's
cannot
what I
have
mean.
it.
Like, this just seems like the extension of the horror, and it almost seems like adding insult to injury for no apparent reason. And like every one of the commentaries, this week I've read through 27 different commentaries on this section.
Mm-hmm.
Every single one has a different interpretation and different, like almost completely different track of take on it. So like, it's almost like nobody else understands why this section's in here either.
Why he mixes?
Why he
despair.
adds this part here? Why it just like the person who ends up agreeing with me is John Chiardi, but it's like it just seems redundant for no apparent reason. Almost like this is the part I'm adding. Chiardi doesn't say this, but it's almost like he had an essay length and he needed.
Well, what do you
to
mean by
add
this?
These six tercets you just read. Because like as
Oh,
you
the
go,
whole thing.
yeah, because the commentary's all over the place in every one I've read. All of them have different interpretations of this section as to why Dante included it. And that's why I'm saying, like, it just seems... It does not seem to carry a purpose other than to extend the length. And that's why I was going to say, the part that I'm adding here is it's almost like he had a word count. That's all. Like, because it does just seem to extend the horror.
Yeah, I mean, I the first part of what you said, I can agree with, like that. There's probably everyone interprets this differently, right? But I don't necessarily think that that's a bad thing.
Oh, I don't either. I'm just saying, like, I don't understand it myself. That's why I was asking.
Right. But I really like the first. So okay, so I'm a bit of a Simon and Garfunkel fan. That's gonna betray my age. But when I think of that first tercet, I think of The Sound of Silence, that whole song, right? Especially when I hear the sound of hands, right? Which, there is noise happening, and there is even a kind of a language, right? But language is diverse, horrible dialects. We all know what biblical event that's
Yeah.
reminding us of. And the idea behind that myth, is that when we're not speaking a common language, it makes sense that in hell you don't speak a common language, right? It makes sense that in hell everyone is coming from their own point of view. C.S. Lewis talks about this in The Great Divorce. He talks about how you can control every aspect of hell. It's the opposite of heaven, where if you stand on a blade of grass, even the blade of grass will not bend to you. But in hell, everything bends to you. You can surround yourself with everything you want. You can put yourself in a mansion with amazing food, right? But it will all be an illusion. Like the food will not nourish you. The mansion will not protect you from the weather, things like that, because everyone is coming at things from their own perspective. There's no universal point of view in hell for Lewis, and here it's sort of the same, right? Everyone is speaking their own language. There's not a universal point of view, which for Dante would be the point of view of God, right? Like if you've aligned yourself to God, then everyone's looking in the same way. So this is sort of how I think we talked on a different panel. I talked a little bit about about how you might say that the truth is unitary, but lies are multiple. And I think that Dante is coming from that perspective, which is why the languages are so diverse, which is why there's every kind of dialect in the world, and also it shows anger and suffering and I think that the failure to unify is a characteristic of hell that is like really important, and so I think that explains the first tercet at least.
Okay, and I can get behind that. I hate the C.S. Lewis apologetic explanation, but the rest of it I agree.
He is who he is. Like,
well, but my issue
if
is like
else, if nothing else, it's going to give you the perspective of Cambridge and Oxford academics at the time.
No,
right?
And
which
on
is
that part I agree. It's just after doing research into the Tower of Babel more recently, like the myth that's even taught dogmatically about that one. Like we'll say that for the after because that's another long one. But yeah, like
okay. That's directly related to the set.
Yeah, no, I know, but I don't want to go into that portion of it. What I'm going to get at is that makes sense because essentially he's showing the fall, he's showing the Tower of Babel. Pretty much the only thing that hasn't been referenced is the two other great calamities that should be like referenced at this point are Sodom and Gomorrah and the Noachian flood. So it just seems to be the extension of the horror, and that's what I'm saying. To me, like at least that first tercet, okay, I can buy that. That's similar, if I remember correctly, to what Sayers says about that particular section as well, because I think she even has like a footnote to it. But again, like this just seems like, how to put it? Like, remember the old Dick Tracy movie with Warren Beatty?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like that extra 2-minute like dialogue after the intro, like you get the opening monologue, then you get the intro music, then you get that extra like 2-minute. It just seems like that extra 2-minute postscript of "fuck you" that didn't need to be there. Like is how it feels. Because like that was just more of the narrator like describing how everything was wrong and everything was screwed up.
Dante's already being too harsh on the denizens of hell.
More like he's trying to. No, I was saying it's more like he's trying to almost inoculate the reader for what is to come. If that makes sense.
I kind of felt the opposite. I kind of felt like he was, like, to me, this is sort of the kindest part of hell, right? There's at least some consolation here. Like, we'll see that with Castle of Light.
Well, but as we just talked about, that it's also the most vile part and most vitriolic part because you're so close you can taste it. Makes it that much
sure.
More.
There's a kind of
that's why I said it seems like an inoculation to me.
But I do think Dante will ultimately show that every other part of it, like as bad as it is to have that temptation where you're close, close to salvation, but you'll never get there. That's bad. But for Dante, I think it gets worse, like progressively worse.
Yeah, I know, but me and Dante are going to disagree on that.
I
We'll
know,
get into
I know.
that. Now, like I said, that just seems like a slightly extension that didn't need to be there. Now, that being said, it was, at least in Longfellow's translation, in my opinion, beautiful but very difficult to like speak. Like this is, you can tell that Longfellow is meant to be read, not spoken aloud. Like you can tell
Yeah,
that
it does sound really, yeah.
it just doesn't sound right. That he was not a great orator.
Well, it's not Marcusa, but that's right.
Yeah,
Um,
and that's what I'm saying. So it's like it's very beautifully written, and like the part that honestly like I drew back to was the part even as sand doth when the whirlwind breathes, because at this point in time you're talking about like the metaphor of the breath of life, the spirit of being within the wind, because of the concept of air being a actual particulate mass being alien to them at this point.
oh, see, when I
And
think of the world in the second tercet, now that we're in the second tercet, I think of what's going to come up, which is Paolo and Francesca, right?
hmm?
And this is okay. Well, we'll talk about it when we get to Paolo
Yeah,
and Francesca, I guess. But you know that the word passive and the word passion have the same etymological root.
hmm?
So if you are a victim of passion, you're being blown by the winds, right? You're not in control of what you do. Like the will is not in charge, the passions are in charge, right? The wind is in charge, and so this whirlwind is. We're starting to feel the whirlwind because we're approaching the place where Paolo and Francesca is, right? So this is like going to be the plane of lust when we get there.
Yeah, this is the
Uh,
multiple layers of meaning that I was kind of getting into
Yeah.
because
But
I
for
think it's
me,
what.
like the whirlwind isn't the breath of God. To me, the whirlwind is kind of the opposite. It's like just being buffeted
Well,
by
no,
random.
that's why I said spirit in the air as opposed to God in the air because
But not
remember
a
at
good
this
spirit.
at this time the bad spirits, good spirits, immaterial they believed all of it was in the air. No,
I kind of feel it.
they believed all of it was in what we now call air. I'm not saying they were all the same, just that they were all in the medium that we call air. They called ether.
But remember, when it says the whirlwind, remember the biblical line that you probably immediately thought of when you saw that, which was about inheriting the whirlwind,
Hmm.
right? The play Inherit the Wind, which is my favorite play,
Really, I
is
didn't know
about.
that.
Oh yeah, absolutely love it.
I
Scope's
honest,
Monkey Trial, passion of mine.
I honestly figured that it would be a Shakespearean one. Like honestly, like that just surprised
Oh, I should say my favorite American play is yeah, I'll forget that. Mhm. My favorite play, in the New World. But yeah, and Inherit the Wind is quoting even the language of the King James Version Bible, which is a language that you'll see in Shakespeare too.
Uh huh.
And so the inheriting the wind basically means inheriting, like, everything comes to ruin. So this is the whirlwind that we're talking about, I think.
Well, like I said,
And the sand, right? The whirlwind is carrying sand, and what does sand do in a whirlwind?
yes, no.
Like, you're not gonna have a good time,
This is not.
right?
There's no argument. I was just pointing this
But
out
I'm
because
not arguing with you.
yeah, yeah. Dante's. I honestly think he always tries to do multiple layers because like that was just the writing style of his day, and he was in my
I'm yes
opinion
anding you here. I'm not
oh
contradicting you. I'm just saying, in addition
well
to
well okay I get you because like a lot of people when they hear that they think breath of life that's only God. It's like well, like when you're talking about the spirit the superstitions of the people in the 14th century, like they didn't even understand air was particles. They didn't understand air had mass. They didn't like this is not something they had conception of until what was it, Despi, 1780s? It was a while.
Something around that. Yeah.
and Dorothy makes it more clear. She says that the whirlwind whips the spinning sands together.
Yeah. Whereas to me, like even as the sand doth, to me is more like talking about the sand cloaking you. It's talking about the sand like actually like adhering to your skin as the whirlwind breathes. Because it's talking about that almost like you doff a cloak.
What do you
Yeah, well,
mean
that makes sense.
the sand doesn't stick to your skin unless you have something wet. Like quite
Well, no,
literally,
it's
this
like the oil on your skin as it rips away your skin as the whirlwind goes by. It sticks to you for a
yeah,
second.
no. What my main thing is I think this is just showing the level of discomfort more than anything.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, I
as
wasn't meaning
somebody
that
as
as a good
somebody
thing.
that yeah, no, but I'm just saying, as somebody that's worked out in a field and whatnot with different clothing and whatnot, and you have a
Hmm.
whirlwind of dust and sand that literally comes and hits you, it gets
Hmm.
into every opening everywhere and makes you extremely uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
On top of already feeling the discomfort that you feel from not being able to reach heaven but still being able to hear it, you're still being made even more uncomfortable.
I think we're agreeing on that one because to me, like being cloaked in sand is not exactly a pleasurable experience. It's somebody who lived in
Well, and also look,
Florida.
you can see the cloaking too because it does say that the air is forever black, right? So the sand is obscuring everybody's vision.
Yeah, and that's all I was getting at. Is like to me that was like it like cloaking the individuals there. It was indicating what you were saying, Despy. Of oh shit, now everything sucks. Because
Right.
anybody who's been to the beach and gotten sand into places they didn't know existed understands this discomfort. Okay, on to the next part because I think like this does kind of get the point across that this seems to be the extension of the misery. Even in like your agreement, you just think there's a little bit more to it with the first two set, but that's fair.
So he cannot see because everything's black, right? But he can hear because he
Yeah,
says,
the
what is this which I now hear?
yeah.
So,
And here's where he gets into it. And I.
It's my.
Oh,
It's.
oh, it's
I'm
your
next.
yeah, your go. My bad. Sorry. We even haven't come
And
to
I,
the
O
first
master,
two.
what so grievous is to these that maketh them lament so sore? He answered, I will tell thee very briefly. These have no longer any hope of death, and this blind life of theirs is so debased. They they envious are of every other fate. No fame of them the world permits to be. Misericord and justice both disdain them. Let us not speak of them, but look and pass. And I, who looked again, beheld a banner, which, whirling around, ran on so rapidly, that of all pause it seemed to me indignant. And after it there came so long a train of people, that I ne'er would have believed that ever death so many had undone. When some among them I had recognized, I looked and I beheld the shade of him, who made through cowardice the great refusal.
Yeah. Actually, I am going to open up Longfellow's commentary on this one because what he talks about there. Where is it?
I think maybe we're off on the lines a little bit
What do you mean?
because 62 is the beginning of a tercet, and then I went to look at the Italian
No,
at Dartmouth.
these are numbered specifically to this document. It starts at one, goes through.
No, right, but the numbering should be the same. So you have the tercet starting at 62, and Dartmouth has it starting at 61.
Yes,
Everything seems
because
to be off.
it's not counting the spaces in the same way. Because I have an empty space at space one. Like I said,
Oh, so it's not going to match.
this is copy pasted and then numbered with Libra. That's why next time I'm going to do images because this didn't work
Yeah,
out.
I can.
Yeah, this didn't work out in the same way. That's why I was I'm going to change
I
it
was looking
next
for the
week.
Italian word for hope of death because this would have been a good thing to troll Eucharist on. Like, without any hope of death, that makes me think of suicide, right? Like, if you have hope in death, it means whatever, maybe it means whatever suffering you're experiencing can be over when you're dead, right? But here, we find that no, your suffering does not end when you die. And so the hope of death uh, is no longer an illusion that they can like believe in.
No, no, on that part I agree. I was just bringing up Longfellow because as he puts a mark at the Great Refusal, I wanted to bring up that this is foreshadowing because this is Celestine V, the Pope Celestine V that he's talking about, and that's why I wanted to pull up because Longfellow brings up specifically, generally supposed to be Pope Celestine V, is who through cowardice the Great Refusal. Like that is that's a lot of foreshadowing with how he views certain popes, and especially contemporary popes, in this particular like area, and that like he is now talking about like we are entering at this point the furthest point from God into hell, and this is like he's already talking about the popes. Like that's an important barrier to bring up, in my opinion.
So here's how we control Eucharist. Is the term is speranza de morte. We got to ask him about speranza de morte. See what he thinks of that.
Trying to make him a Catholic again. I don't think it's gonna work.
No. He's
I'm
more
joking.
Catholic than I am. Yeah.
I'm joking because like
Yeah.
he would hate that, but I agree with you on that. He is more Catholic than you are.
I mean, don't get me wrong, you would be a bad troll because Dante is very much against suicide, right? But at least here, you can understand the motivation of suicide, which is you hope that death will bring you some kind of relief.
I don't know. I personally, not because of anything in the Divine Comedy, mind you, it's actually from Demonarchia. I actually think he's ambiguous on suicide, personally. In reality, theologically, he's against it, but I don't think he has an issue with it, like on like a personal, like worldly level.
I mean, I'm just interpreting this poem, right?
Yeah.
But, it's interesting to see what you saw in Demonarchia that makes you think that. Because if he was more hopeful on the matter, then he would have suicidal people in both hell and purgatory. And I think he only has them in hell.
He doesn't. That's why I said it's not from the Divine Comedy. I just think, like, societally, he understood sometimes there's too much pain, too much suffering. Like, sometimes, like, you know, like, I think on a humanistic level.
But he understands the temptation of suicide.
Well, but I think he also understands, like, because, as we point out, like, he is a humanist of his age. A Christian humanist, but a humanist. Like, he it's not just a temptation. He understands that sometimes it is too much for somebody to bear. Because this is before the concept of, you know, God doesn't give you too much to bear. That's a 16th century concept.
No. Yeah, Dante would not say that.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. So it's like, he understood that concept. So I think on a personal level, he understood it and like, was ambiguous. Not favorable, just ambiguous about it. But on a theological level, totally against it.
I mean, I think he would just say that it's a tragedy. Like, when something like that happens, it's tragic.
Yeah.
But there's nothing to save it. There's no hope in that act. So
that part I agree with.
That makes it all the more tragic.
No, on this I agree. I just think he was ambiguous because of like where he lived. He saw that, like, especially in Florence, he had a strict demarcation line between the haves and the have-nots. He saw the people who made that choice out of desperation or starvation or all kinds of other crap that was going on in those streets at that time. And I just think he had a more humanist view on it, but theologically he couldn't square it. So he was very against it on a theological soul basis, but he understood it on a human basis.
Yeah, I'd like to see the evidence for that first, for the human basis.
We'll get into it because we do want to go into that in Demonarchia another time, because another great work of Dante that we.
Well, when we get to the suicides, we can maybe talk about it. Expand.
Oh yeah, we can have it pulled up side by side for that. Okay. And like the great refusal to me is a significant point here because he's using the propaganda phrase of the day as opposed to what was said in his time. Like he's saying it as like Celestine would have said it, or Celestine's contemporaries would have said it. Um, and like that's important in my eyes because like he chose to do that in the Italian as well, and like that seems to be putting his own personal hermeneutics into like the writing again. Like so, this is now Dante the author speaking, as opposed to Dante the character.
Yeah. Sure. And right now, it's hard for me to. Well, there's also Dante, the author of the Divine Comedy, and Dante, the author of Monarchy, which are going to be two different things too.
Also true, but yeah, like I said, I think historically, I think the reason.
In different times of his life, he might have actually changed his mind on the subject, right?
Oh, yeah.
I see something
thought about it like that.
Tension with this, then it's possible that we're looking at two different opinions.
That could be too, because I forgot that the separation could have been enough to have created this. Cause this can be a light switch flip for some people, where that realization kicks in of, oh, I get it. Like, you know, I mean, how many times has that happened to you or I in the past on a subject? I know at least a few times for myself, where just 1 second it was there, next second it was gone, or vice versa.
Yeah, you're talking about maybe a decade between publications.
Yeah, I hadn't considered that, and I should have.
He might have been more hopeful, or I don't know, more pragmatic. I don't know. He might have been less calcified in some of his views when he was 10 years younger. You know.
Yeah, and what I've been doing is I've been focusing too much on the textual analysis and interpretations, as opposed to like actually like contemplating that portion, because like. Reading this many commentaries, this many translations, it gets rough at times.
Well, commentators are also going to pay attention to the history of the author as well, depending on what school of interpretation they come from. You know. Yeah,
because like when we get to, oh god, I forget they use those things in Asia. I could never get the handle of using one of those. I just couldn't. Give me a fucking Q-tip, man. Like, any day. Like, you just gave me, like, fucking trauma flashbacks of the first time I had one of those used on me when I was in Asia. I was like, wait, what are you doing? Why are you sticking metal in my ear?
Now, to be fair, usually they have ones that are made of like bamboo or rattan, but I have a metal one.
These were little brass ones that they used on me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing it's whatever they have access to at the time.
I have an itch I can't scratch. Let's put it that way.
By the way, because he just trauma responds me with the frickin' ear cleaner. Like, fun fact. Asian people actually have different earwax than Caucasians.
Yep.
It's fucking wild. It comes out like flaky, as opposed to like earwax, like serum-y like we do. It's really weird. Oh, okay. Now back to the Dante. Now that I'm frickin' slightly less frickin' reacting to the imagery. Like. Yes, I do think that he's talking about suicide here, but like again, this is one of these things that I believe Dante is very specifically trying to allow the reader to get those secondary meanings as he's getting ready to, as you and I, or as all of us know, this is about to get real heavy real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, I like this part where the They are envious of every other fate. It makes me think of the oppression Olympics,
Yeah.
or when people are like, somebody complains about something and someone's like, "Oh, I wish I had that problem," and then they describe a worse problem that they have,
Yeah.
like that. Even other people's like tales of woe sound good to you compared to what you're going through.
Grass is always greener in another way of saying
I'm just about to say that.
it.
Yeah. Well, this is where all the different languages like still comes into play, right? Everyone is seeing their own point of view. They're stuck in feeling sorry for themselves to the point where they even envy other people in hell, right? Because they're like, well, that person has a better punishment than I have. Yeah.
Well, but I mean, as somebody who kind of understands torture a little bit, like, yeah, that makes sense because certain things are worse than others. Like, I kind of get
Mhm.
it. Like, this kind of goes into the oppression
But the
Olympics
thing
when it
that's
goes
happening
into.
to you is always the worst
Mm,
if you're in hell, because the
yeah,
people in hell
potentially.
aren't capable of, are less capable of that kind of empathy for the suffering of others,
Well, in this section of hell, yes.
or any section.
No, as we get
I don't
closer
think
to
you
the
see
transition between purgatory, you get to see a little bit of compassion. Not much, but a little bit.
compassion in Dante or compassion in the
From
damned.
the world itself, and that's what I'm saying. Like, I think he's.
Oh no, no, I'm talking about
Go ahead.
the damned. Damned don't have compassion for others.
But as this is all metaphor, if he shows compassion in the hell itself, does that not in and of itself show that there is compassion in hell? Like,
Right, which is what.
yeah. Well, that's why I say since it's all metaphor, I think he's trying to show that the damned have no compassion. They have no hope in any layer of hell.
Right,
But
that's my
there
exactly.
is compassion in hell, and I think this is the allegory of who runs hell after the rapture. That's Jesus. Like
Yeah,
that's
Jesus is not right, but for Dante, Jesus is not present. In fact, he's continually talking about
no.
how God is.
I agree, but that's what I think he's trying to show is that the plane itself is not without compassion. The denizens are.
Okay, let's wait until we get to the boatman because I think you'll be very disturbed by that then.
No, I love that part.
Where it's explained to him why nobody should have compassion for these people. They deserve their fate. You should take pleasure in kicking them off the boat.
Hmm. But that's
So
Charon. I mean, that.
no, that's Virgil that told.
Yeah, but that's what I mean is that's when we're dealing with Charon. Like, remember, Virgil does not have the sacred virtues. Like this is
Right.
where that to me that is Dante showing his horror at what Virgil is saying, as opposed to we should feel horror at it.
He is, but Dante ultimately becomes persuaded of what Virgil's. We'll see. We'll get to it when we get there.
All right.
I don't push us too forward.
I mean, we do that constantly, anyways, and
Yeah, of course.
It's unavoidable in a text like this.
Sure, because there's a lot of foreshadowing. Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, I was about to say, yeah, with Dante doing it himself, it's almost
Mhm.
unavoidable.
Yeah.
Because you have to be like, well, he's foreshadowing this. Well, why do we have to explain that? Because like he didn't explain shit yet.
Yeah.
So now on to 82. Forthwith I comprehend and was certain that this sect was the caitiff wretches, hateful to God and to his enemies. These miscreants, who never were alive, were naked and were stung exceedingly by gadflies and by hornets that were there. These did their faces irrigate with blood, which with tears commingled at their feet by disgusting worms was gathered. And when to gazing farther I betook me, God damn, that's a weird phrasing. And when to gazing farther I betook me, people I saw unto great rivers bank, whence I said, Master, now vouchsafe me, fuck, I hate this word too, vouchsafe to me, that I may know who these are, and what law makes them appear so ready to pass over, as I discern athwart the dusky light. And he to me, these things shall be known to thee, as soon as our footsteps stay upon the dismal shore of Acheron. First of all, Acheron. Now we get to start explaining the fucking topology of hell. But
Or at least he's serving.
yeah, but like as we're getting into this, like he's talking about the state of gadflies and hornets, which I found significant because my taxonomy fascination. It was at this point in time that the naturalists were starting to distinguish hornets very specifically because of the lack of loss of stinger upon strike. So like, I wonder if he does this because of contextual reference or because he had contact with some of the best naturalists in Italy, being in Florence.
Yeah.
Like it was just fascinating to me that he included hornets specifically. Where he lived in Italy, the most predominant thing would have been bees, which would have actually had a different stinging pattern. And why he didn't reference what would have been most known to him.
Well, it's very simple. I mean, like we talk about behaviors. Like bees don't sting unless it's out of a like a sense of protection. Hornets just sting whatever the fuck they want. Like seriously, if you exist near them, they're probably going to sting you.
Well, I mean, they are doing that out of a sense of protection because they're territorial and you're in their territory. But
right. But I mean, like you can walk into a field filled with bees, and as long as you're not like purposely like kicking them or trying to irritate them,
or accidentally
they'll
step
just
on one and release that pheromone, and,
right. But I mean, like if you're doing your thing and you're being kind of keeping your distance, do it just being kind of nice and watching your step or whatnot, bees will just leave you alone.
And
Hornets, you walk into a particular zone like a radar, you get aggro like shit.
I mean, yeah, like I said, it could be that, but like I said, just like where he lived, it would have been wasps and bees. Again, it just seems like an oddity to mention hornets as opposed to, again, wasps do the same kind of shit you're talking about, and he would have had better experience with them because paper wasps are all over the freaking place in northern Italy.
Yeah.
So it's again like it just seemed like an odd quirk to me, and it may just be my own idiosyncrasy that's catching it, but like gadflies, that was ubiquitous across all of Europe.
Yeah.
Hornets were not. Hornets are very particular to certain climates within Europe. Like, don't get me wrong, they're all over Europe, but like certain elevations, certain environments, and within the biomes, etc. And like around Florence, like they don't even have that problem now. So unless like they drove out all the hornets in the last 500 years, I don't understand the reference unless it's just a weird quirk of choice that he knew something that the general person did not and included it, or if it was just a idiosyncrasy of his.
It could be one of those things where because it's not something that's regularly experienced by the people, but they've heard horror stories of the hornets themselves, that this is something that's literally playing into like a fear sense
I didn't think to look
in the people that are reading it.
Hornets. Yeah, I didn't think about that. That may be it. That culturally, because they are unknown, they are more scary.
Right.
Maybe. Just seems like a
Also,
weird
like you can think of like redeeming characteristics for bees that you wouldn't necessarily assign to hornets.
Right, but I mean, like even when we're talking about like hornets and wasps, when you're talking about like wasps, like what I want to say is basically the range on a hornet to get aggro from a hornet is pretty far away. The range on a wasp, you got to be a lot closer than you do a hornet.
Right.
Well, and this comes from what most people don't realize unless they're fucking bug nerds. A lot of hornets nest in the ground, and therefore your
Yeah.
steps are actually disturbing the nest. And like, even if you're not crushing anything underground, even if none of that's happening, you are shaking stuff around the queen, and she says, "Go get it."
So maybe it makes sense to have a smaller range, right? Because there's regions of hell, and you would expect these things to like stay in their lane, right? Because
Yeah,
the next
maybe.
area is its own form of torture. So you wouldn't expect their territory to be all that long.
Yeah.
Although you kind of do, because people underestimate how large hell is. It's the size of a continent, so or potentially bigger than any continent because it goes all the way to the center of the earth.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not getting into landmass sizes because then we have to do math. And I don't want to go start looking up
We're
figures.
doing that anyway when we get to the heavens.
Yeah, but not on square mileage of land. Now, like, as we're starting to, like, for those watching, like, the final portion of this, we start getting into, like, him starting to talk about the shore of Acheron. We're now talking about the topology of hell. Because, in a lot of respects, Dante was taking from the concept of Tartarus and the Greek hell, and very much extrapolating onto the Christian notion of hell at this time. Now, he was not the first to do it, so this is not his concept, but he is definitely the most well known for it because of the fact of the fame of his writing. There are certain mistakes he makes because at the time period of his writing, the actual understanding of the mythology was woefully lacking. As Rich has pointed out in previous episodes and this episode, Dante never read Homer. He references things from Homer, but he never read Homer. So, like, he is referencing a secondhand account of a secondhand account of Homer. It is one of those things where he is going to make mistakes if you were talking about from a mythological standpoint, but from a theological and literary standpoint, he is pretty much the gold standard for creating this topology. Because this is the most widely known even today, because even most mythicists do not like study deep enough to understand the differences in this topology. You would have to have a Greek mythologian to have any chance of them understanding the little mistakes he makes.
All right, Rich, you're up next.
And it
Okay.
starts on the next page at 107.
Let me get there. Then with mine eyes ashamed and downward cast, fearing my words might irksome be to him, from speech refrained I till we reached the river. And lo, toward us coming in our boat, an old man, hoary with the hair of eld, crying, Woe unto you, ye souls depraved! Hope nevermore to look upon the heavens. I come to lead you into the other shore, to the eternal shades in heat and frost. And thou, that yonder standest, living soul, withdraw thee from these people who are dead. But when he saw that I did not withdraw, he said, By other ways, by other ports, thou to the shore shalt come, not here for passage. A lighter vessel needs must carry thee.
Okay, now this I actually wanted to. I'm glad it ended up being you, because I don't understand Sayer's translation on this, because she does 3 tercets and then a quatrain. And like, I don't understand why, and I cannot understand. Like, I can't find an explanation as to why. She also starts the next one with a tercet, which is weird, or a quatrain rather, which is weird. At least the way that it plays out on the page.
My guess is that the Italian, the middle 2 lines are actually one line, because the the third line isn't capitalized, and typically you capitalize a new line. So my guess is
So she just made him
like
exceedingly long compared to Longfellow. Then is it the
could-
only thing I could think of? Because like, it just felt weird that because it also the tercets don't line up. She has less tercets in the same number of
or
explanations.
or she has the same number of tercets. It's just that some of the lines in the tercets are so long that they take up two lines, like visually. But I don't see more than 3 capitalized words in any tercet.
Okay, I mean,
Like, for instance, if you look at the red, if you look at not here a higher skiff must bear thy load, then said my guide, Karen, wilt thou roar? And then the next word is and capitalized, which makes me think it's the next line. So there's something that it might have just might be formatting errors that we're seeing here.
okay, yeah, because it was just like because you were so like familiar with Sayers, I thought maybe you understood what was going on here.
I'm not familiar with her translation. I'm used to reading Mark Musa for translation. I'm familiar with Sayers' commentary, but not her translation.
Why
Musa
do
is
you do
my
that?
guy. I've just always found Musa easier to read.
But
And
why not his commentary? Because he does have one.
I've looked at his commentary. It's just I think that Sayers' commentary is the best. Like it's the most detailed. It's the most poetic in terms of what it focuses on. And like I said, I used to read like a much larger commentary of Sayers, which I can't find these days. That was just like amazing in its detail. Like every single line had commentary on it, which Musa doesn't as much. But I mean, I do occasionally look at Musa's commentary too, because
Okay.
it's in the footnotes of his translations.
Yeah,
So it's
like
I
I
don't think
honestly
there's
figured you
one
read her
commentator.
translation along with like the commentary, like because like
Yeah, no, because I know that she has some accuracy issues, right? Like she tries to experiment a little bit in ways that are great if you already know Dante, because it'll give you like a different perspective. But for like someone who's reading Dante for the first time, or even someone like me who's read it before but isn't an expert, I kind of want to as most straightforward a translation as I can find.
well no what I was gonna say is what I do is I read their translation and then I read their commentary because their commentary is on their translation and therefore like reading a commentary that's not associated with the translation there is going to be things that the commentator will use that don't actually translate into the other ones at all because
Yeah, it's
they're
all the more reason to mix it, right? Because then I'm
yeah.
going to get a different,
Well,
like
that's why I say I just read one, then their commentary, then the next, then their commentary. That way, I get the commentaries in context.
if I'm reading Musa and then I have a question about something and I move to the Sayers commentary in order to get an explanation of it, I'm also going to see the Sayers translation as I'm looking at that apparatus. So it's not like I never use the Sayers translation. It's just that my default, if I'm just reading for pleasure, is going to be Mark Musa.
Yeah, it's just interesting. That's why I asked, because like
Because Longfellow's annoying.
I didn't. That's why I didn't say do Longfellow. But like I said, when I was trying to figure out that one section, I found 27 different commentaries on this by experts. It's not like you're spoiled for choice.
Yeah, and I kind of want to take this like thing that you put together and move it to a spreadsheet, and then
Um,
we can put like multiple, as many columns as we want for both commentaries and translations, and
Well,
then
and we can
you can
do
move
that
the
for
tabs
like a
along.
doc to put into like the tabs
Yeah,
as we go. But
yeah.
like I said, for visual, for like what's coming up on stream, I think next week what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take like actual visual screenshots of the lines and then line them up with like grid lines in a visual software visual program to get it to where I am lining up images of the words as opposed to trying to get lines to match up in these columns. Because when you're doing it in this, if you do not match up point by point the text box and where the copy is, so like as I copy in the stuff from Longfellow, those numbers had to be done in a different document because it will not let me number in inside a text window. So I had to create two different documents, number them, and then here's what's funny: when I put the Sayers one in, even though it was numbered in the same way, it would not copy the numbers on the same way. So like doing it in Libra was the problem. So doing it with an image, I can then just superimpose a number on each line, and it will always line up because then it's always 1-to-1 to how it appears in the book.
Right. But that's
Right.
true with spreadsheet too, right?
Huh?
Are we
That's
ready
true
to
with
move on
spreadsheet
to the
Yeah.
to the next part?
Yeah, we were just finishing up that bit, but yeah, the next bit is the fun part. So go ahead, Despy.
Okay. And unto him the guide, vex thee not, Sharon. It is so willed there where is power to do, that which is willed, and farther question not. Thereat, where quieted the fleecy cheeks of him the ferryman of the that livid fen, who about his eyes had wheels of flames. But all those souls who weary were and naked, their color changed and gnashed their teeth together, as soon as they had heard those cruel words. God they blasphemed, and their progenitors. The human race, the place, the time, the seed of their engendering and of their birth.
Yeah, I always love that part because, like, the description of fucking Chera is fucking great. But then it's also, like, this is where we get the second most famous line out of this fucking thing. And I know it's going to drive freaking Rich nuts that it's also the second most famous line out of this work. The gnash their teeth. Their color changed and gnashed their teeth. Like, it's amazing to me how much the beginning of the Inferno is the most famous portion of a much longer work. It's not even like it's the beginning like third of the Inferno that has the most famous lines in it.
Well, in this case, I don't think it's really Dante's line, right? He's just referencing the Bible here.
Well, yeah, but I see it referenced more the way he words it than the way the Bible words it. That's why I'm saying, like, it's another one that's famous because of Dante. Mainly
Like there will
because I
be
think,
much gnashing of teeth in hell.
yeah, I'm just thinking it's mainly because a lot of authors read Dante before they end up writing their own book. They end up referencing him more. It's like, just why. Idiosyncratic point of history.
I'd like to think that many people are reading Dante, but I think they're reading Matthew, right? And I think Dante is referencing Matthew here.
Agreed.
He says there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth in hell, and then of course Dante says, "Oh look, I'm in hell, and there's the gnashing of teeth." Like,
and a few lines before was the weeping and blood. So
there you go.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Yeah, no, I agree. I'm just saying, like, it's just another famous line. Just like it's technically should be more famous from Greek mythology. You know, the line about abandon all hope, but it's Dante's version that's the most famous. It's just as Despy pointed out earlier, pop culture creep has been prevalent forever, and has been one of those things that changes societies in ways that we overlook because of how much it creeps into everything. We just kind of overlook that it's even changing it.
mm-hmm.
So yeah, and I think that's really what it comes down to. Despy, how many different renditions of Dante has there been? Besides the novels, there's like I can think of like 3 different graphic novels. I can think of like a couple dozen versions of video games, either text-based.
Mm-hmm.
Like just like this is just so popular in
Well,
that way.
I mean, like not yesterday, like last week, I was wearing a Devil May Cry T-shirt.
Yeah.
Which the main character is Dante, and his brother's name is Virgil, and they fight demons in hell.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's what I'm saying. Like it's just so common in pop culture and has been pretty much since the
My
frickin'
favorite movie
14th century.
My favorite movie is Ikiru, right? Which is like there's a Virgil character there, and he's taking somebody. There's some obvious references to Dante in that
Yeah.
movie.
Hmm.
I mean, I didn't draw that
Even though
parallel until
Sensei
you
gives me
just said it,
cringes
but
every time I say Ikiru instead of what Ikaru.
Hmm.
yeah, I hadn't drawn that reference, but yeah, like that tracks too. So, um, God, I need to go back and rewatch that movie. It's been
We
too
should watch
long.
that movie on screen time
Oh,
because
Mystery.
of its Dante.
Uh, yes. The problem is with the three of us on,
Sensei can like translate.
but with the three of us on screen, we're gonna have a hard time not mystery science theatering that son of a bitch, and you know
Hmm.
it.
I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, I'm just saying,
That's a
like,
feature, not a bug.
I know it's just we're gonna have a hard time because there's. I remember some of the scenes, and there's some scenes that are we're gonna have some laughs at, like the grin on Despy as he said "fleecy cheeks." There, he couldn't help himself. He's like, "Fleecy cheeks? Like what the hell?"
But there are some parts where we'll just like be crying.
Oh,
So they.
well, I'll be honest. I rarely cry in movies, but you'll always be able to tell when I get emotional because I get quiet shit. um,
Yeah.
now, like the other point is like I think here he's also trying to point out like the blaspheme not only against God but their progenitors. Like going back to the text, like this is again trying to point out that they blamed everyone but themselves for their predicament, in my opinion, because of the way
Hmm.
that both Longfellow and Sayers translate this particular area. It really seems to be trying to say these who shirk blame and blame everyone, God, their parents, their place of birth, their gender, everything, as to what's
Hmm.
wrong in their life. And to me, that this is the double meaning of Dante coming in. This is the humanist aspect colliding with the theological of if you literally blame everything in both the natural and supernatural world, what else is there? All you got is you. Is I think what
Yep.
he's trying to say here in his snarky 14th century way.
Yeah, most of the damned absolutely blame each other, which is, I think, part of the whole languages thing, where everyone has their own point of view, so everyone speaks their own language. Yeah, everyone's not able to get outside of their own perspective. But there are some exceptions, I think, the Castle of Light being one of them.
No, and we'll get to that. I was just trying to point out. I think this was Dante trying to the reader again, as the author, was trying to make the reader understand that like if you remove everything in the natural and supernatural world, the only thing you have left is you. I think he was trying to point him to the
Yeah,
logical fallacy of you can't blame everything but yourself because eventually that means all you have left is yourself.
right. I agree.
Which is why it stopped there. Sorry, Despy, it cut you a little shorter than the rest of them. But like, I felt that was a
That's
very
fine.
significant portion to talk about because of that aspect.
Sure. It's all
Uh,
good.
Now, this next portion, we are now getting into, in my opinion, the existential horror that Dante is now going to be bringing into the visual imagery, because he's about to start going into like a more like personal description of Charon. Um, and in doing so, like the give a concept of the otherworldliness, not only of environment but of denizen. Like we have now heard the noises, we have had reference to certain smells. Now we're gonna get the actual sight of a true denizen of hell. And I think that he brings particular emphasis to this because this is something that in the 14th century was beyond popular. You have like for those in the audience who are like going like using this for like reference for school, there is absolutely no way I can emphasize how many demonology books come out of this particular time period. Like theological, scientific, alchemical, it, fictional. Like it literally permeated every level of
MCU of its
literature.
day.
Huh?
It's the MCU of its
Yeah.
day.
No, like really it was.
Mhm.
It was everywhere. It hit every facet of writing. From the literal to the fictional and anything in between. It is insane if you were to go and look at historical documents between 13 and 1450, the amount of them is just mind-boggling. Like there are more books on this one subject than I thought there were on American tax law. Like it's ridiculous how many there are. All right. Now to the Thereafter altogether they drew back, bitterly weeping, to the accursed shore, which waiteth every man who fears not God. Charon the demon with eyes of lead, beckoning to them, collects them all together, beats with his oar whoever lags behind. As in the autumn time the leaves fall off, first one, then another, till the branch unto the earth surrenders all its spoils. In similar wise, the evil seed of Adam throw themselves from that margin one by one at signals, as birds onto its lure. So they depart across the dusky wave, and ere upon the other side they land. Again this side a new troop assembles. So we get the quick explanation of Charon's description in his eyes, and the reason that again maybe this part's important is this is referencing the Indian. This is specifically like that particular phrase, eyes of lead. That is his eyes like hollow furnaces on fire. This is a singular word that is used in Greek to emphasize a description that had no translation into Latin, English, or Italian, and he just chose to use it. Similarly, Longfellow chose not to change it because he understood he had no way to translate it effectively without making the line like not fit the rest of the tercet. That's amazing to me because like the way it's described in the Indian, like as you go further into that, it's not just eyes of fur, so deep that it sucks the hope from your soul. Is the way the rest of that description goes in the Indian. Like so you were looking at pits of flame in the eye sockets of a denizen who is literally attached to a boat, physically a portion of a boat. Like can't move from the boat, is stuck as part of the boat. And when you look into his eyes, all hope is drained from your soul. Just by the sheer act of looking into his eyes.
Without going on a huge tirade or like diatribe about the MCU and whatnot, could this be where Ghost Rider gets his penitent stare?
Could be. That's a good point.
Fucking hate you because like I actually have to give that credence. I fucking hate you for
That would be a
one.
good question to ask whoever writes for them. Yeah.
Well,
If it's not, then they should write that in right now.
actually, who did
Yeah.
create Ghost Rider? I don't remember the creator of that one.
No, but I mean, you think about it. He basically ferries people that should not be on Earth back to hell. He does stare into their eyes from time to time and literally burn them. Like,
okay, all three creators of Ghost Rider, the original creators, are still alive. So yeah, we can actually ask them maybe one day. I had to look it up because I'm like, who did create that motherfucker?
I'm just saying, like, that's the first thing that came to
Everybody
my
feels
my
Dante, so I don't see why they
yeah.
would be mean.
No, I agree. I'm just saying it's just like I hate that I have to give that credence because like that's one of those things that like everybody
you're
should have
saying
drawn that parallel, and I didn't
you're
either.
are you also saying that he's fully attached to a mode of transportation as well?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Just wondering.
Yes, if you go by the myth, he has been an oarman on the boat for so long, he has literally like fused to the
Yeah.
boat. So essentially, he is a boat centaur. He is a boatar. um, but like, this is the first description of a denizen to hell, and like, stand aside Lovecraft, because like Dante wasn't half bad at it fucking centuries before he got there, buddy. Because I'm gonna tell you, like, that's a pretty terrifying description if you have any kind of like visualization to your imagination.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm boiling some water right now, and this new kettle I have sounds like a car horn when it goes off when the water boils. So when you hear that, there's
Why?
something very hellish to it. I don't know why. It's just the way that the device inside of the spout is made. As the as the steam goes through it, yeah, it makes the same kind of sound.
Okay, no, I understand that. I can even understand the mechanism. Like, I could design the membrane for you. I'm trying to say, why did you buy it? Was it listed as part of the design features?
I thought it was cool. Yeah, that's why I wanted it. Hold on.
Okay.
Let's see.
I was wondering if it was an accident, because if I bought that on accident and suddenly that shit went off and it sounded like a car horn, I'd lose my shit.
See, that's those are all the little like things that it has to go through in order to come out, which is going to make it sound like.
I would get like a hard covering and then really confuse your like neighbors, like there's a car horn going off in your house, and like cover it and lift it off again. Beep beep.
No, see,
it does it kind of quietly at first. It has two modes. And when it hits that second mode, it sounds almost like an air raid siren. It's amazing.
See, like for me, it's just like I don't even like the whistle. Like, I'm that guy. I have the kettle that goes on the counter. Like I hear a click when it hits temperature.
Because I bought a different kettle. It's this copper one that's right back here.
Yeah, one of those.
And it doesn't have a whistle. And one day I was like, forgot that I turned it on or whatever, and like I almost destroyed the kettle. So I wanted something that I could hear no matter where I was in my place. And this is absolutely it. Okay, here we go. It's about to make the noise. There it is.
Thank God your fucking sound gate is catching it. Oh, yep.
It'll get louder in a minute.
I spoke too soon. Oh, that would drive me insane. I would lose my mind, Rich.
It's like a train, actually. It's like a train.
Yeah, it's that part's okay, but the idea of that being anytime I boil a kettle of water, that sound goes off in my house, I'd lose my mind.
Well, it's a little bit quiet at first, and then it gets louder. So when you hear it at the lower level, you're kind of trained to go like straight for it.
Well, like I said, I don't even like the whistle. Like when I actually did the counter or the stovetop kettles like yours. I was that guy who hit the lever so that it was up, and the way I could hear it is the water splashing out and getting sizzling. Just like I don't know. This may be a side of like a neurodivergency or just a side of shit from my childhood. Like certain noises, they just bug the living bejesus out of me. Certain high pitched noises. Like, other people will find it, like, okay. To me, it's nails on a chalkboard. Like, it will visibly make me cringe when I hear it. Because I just can't help it. And that would be one of them. Hey, Hey, we got Ancom finally.
Hey.
You live yet, Ancom?
Yes, I am. Sorry. I actually posted both in the Discord side chat and in YouTube chat, hoping one of you would see me, because I didn't want to pop in, and disrupt things. But
anybody who has the role to get into this channel is allowed to pop in at any time. I made sure of it that the only people we want to pop in can pop in.
Okay, cool. Just wanted to make sure I wasn't going to be disruptive. So
no.
Because we did have a problem with that earlier. On the
yeah, fair.
Yeah, and that was why it was fixed. And it wasn't intentional. The same thing. It's one of those things where it's like, no. Now anybody who has the Dante role in my server can come in at any time because they are valuable members who can contribute to the conversation. I fixed that mistake after the first time. My document.
Oh, hey, you want to run it by all ye who enter here?
What do you mean? Sorry, I'm getting him the document.
Well, just that we already did that part, and he might be interested in.
Oh yeah. I'm sorry.
We're in hell proper now because we got past the sign.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, I was just getting him the document, Rich.
Have we talked about Cerberus? Have we hit Cerberus yet?
No. We have just got through the description of Charon.
Okay.
And
I love the fact that Dante, I love the fact of how much Dante is incorporating Greek mythology into this, into this Christian depiction of hell. The fact that he has Charon and Cerberus there is quite enjoyable.
yeah,
But Virgil was also somebody that he really admired, who was also guiding him, and Virgil also made a version of hell that was the
based
Greek
on
hell at the
Tartarus.
same time.
Yeah, based on
Yeah.
Tartarus, yeah. That's why he isn't the first to do this. He is the most. This was actually something we were talking about before you got here. He is the most famous to do this, so much so because of pop culture creep, that even though technically this practice predates him by several decades, it is something that after him becomes prolific. We are talking massive increases to the point where in contemporary to Dante within 30 years either side, you're talking in 5 figures of demonology texts written in just that time period. 5 figures. It's ridiculous how many there
Not
are.
including supernatural.
Huh?
Not including Kripke.
Oh,
Supernatural.
yeah, we're not even
Brought
including
demonology back
yeah,
to popular culture.
yeah, we're not even talking just normal supernatural, just demonology. It's just
That was a joke.
I understand. No, I understand that, but I was just trying to get at it. It's like just demonology. It was something like 32,000 texts in that 60-year period. And when you're talking about almost all of it being handwritten, that's fucking impressive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes you kind of understand the value of who's the 1950s psychologist who breaks with Freud? Jung, Carl Jung.
Oh, Jung, yeah.
It makes you sort of understand his value. The reason demonology becomes such an obsession is for the same reason that the gods are an obsession, in the ancient world, and basically throughout human history. The way that we like to describe the sort of inner life of humans by allegorizing it to the gods or the saints or the angels or the demons or anything supernatural. Plato explains it at the beginning of the Republic. He talks about how in order to talk about justice, we have to talk about the city and what is a city. And all of these parts of the city become aspects of justice or whatever. We have to we have to use these metaphors in order to understand these like big concepts that are sort of beyond us otherwise. And I think demons are a big part of that, a big part of how we sort of understand our interior life.
And somebody like Sapolsky or Sagan would say it more like, these are the understandings of primitive man's attempt to quantify the unknown or potentially unknowable within themselves and within the nature around them. This is one of the things that, with all new discovery and new extrapolation, even from non-perfect evidence, that this is something that will have to constantly evolve, as opposed to just
Sagan
reality.
calls it literally a demon-haunted world, right? That's like the title of his book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And this is just kind of what I'm getting. Yeah, it's just.
Sorry.
No, it's as you get into like the significance of this, we're getting into now not only the theology and social commentary. Now we are getting into the psychology of the day, because as we've pointed out in every episode, fans, this is some crazy freaking level of multi-layered bullshit where every sentence has 10 to 15 meanings depending on which context you're looking at it in, and it was done intentionally by a person who thought like a goddamn Rubik's Cube. Like, I'm being slightly hyperbolic, but I mean, you're talking about a guy who was layers upon layers of every single thing he ever wrote. And since Ancom just got here, Ancom will get to close us out with the final reading.
Sorry, let me find
Final
where we
section,
are.
Last page.
Got it. Oh, so that's why you
side.
colored them. Got
Yes.
it. Okay. My son, the courteous master, said to me, all those who perish in the wrath of God here meet together out of every land. And ready are they to pass o'er the river, because celestial justice spurs them on, so that their fear is turned into desire. This way there never passes a good soul, and hence if Charon doth complain to thee, well mayest thou know now what his speech imports. This being finished, all the dusk champagne trembled so violently that of that terror, the recollection bathes me still with sweat. The land of tears gave forth a blast of wind, and fulminated in a vermilion light, which overmastered in me every sense. And as a man whom slept hath seized I fell. Or a man whom sleep hath seized I fell.
Yeah, and this goes back to, again, touching on those foreshadowing of tears and gnashing and wind. Like, this is... Goddamn, I forgot how interwoven all this becomes. You're muted, Rich.
Oh, I wasn't saying anything. I was just nodding.
Oh, but it's hard to tell when your beard gets a little scruffy. It moves, but I can't tell if the lips are moving behind it.
Here it has its own thoughts.
I love the lines because celestial justice spurs them on so that their fear is turned into desire. This way there never passes a good soul. Like, that's powerful in a very unexpected way.
It is. Especially when you factor in the reference here, even though it's not in either of these particular commentaries, that would associate with Sayers or Longfellow. The justice is capitalized. This is a proper noun. This is talking about the angel of justice. It brings another element that is not heavily described and done so for a reason, because it's not wanting to be shown any level of beauty within this layer of hell. But it just
You ever seen the movie Crash?
Yeah. Years ago.
Is that the one where like they get addicted to being in auto crashes or whatever, because the extreme fear that is generated by the accident becomes sexual for them?
Becomes like a drug, yeah.
So fear becomes desire.
Mm-hmm. Kind of like what was that movie with the med students? Flatliners. Kind of does the same.
Oh, yes, I remember Flatliners.
Same kind of concept of fear
Yeah.
driving and morphing into desirous action of some form or another. Both sexual in that one and laterally greed becoming
In fact,
desirous aspects of it.
Sartre writes an essay or a little book called The Emotions, which I can never find. I've been looking for it forever. And in it, he describes how scientists define love, and he's trying to explain how the scientific method isn't perfect, or the way scientists look at the interior life is not perfect, because he's making an argument for what would later be called existentialism, but was basically phenomenology. And he's saying, look, a scientist will tell you that love is a dilation of the pupils, an increase in the heart rate, increase in the blood pressure, and all of these things, right? And they'll say that's how you define love. That's what love is. But then he says, but fear produces the same things.
Almost extensively, with the exception of fear will produce sweats that the love response will not. It's the one exception.
Well, his point was just to say that those are two different experiences that have the same physiological effects, and therefore scientists don't understand the interior life. They're not the final word on the interior life. He says you have to look at self-reports as well, and you have to count your internal experience as like legitimate scientific data. But the point he wasn't trying to make, but that I think follows from this also, is that fear and love are connected in some deep way. But I think for Dante, it's not so much love as it is lust that is connected to fear.
All right, did you say you've been looking for a copy of Sketch for a Theory of the Emotions?
That might be what's called. I've only ever seen it called The Emotions. But
yeah, so I did a quick search for books by Sartre with something relating to that, and I was able to, and that's the name of a book that he wrote, and I found the PDF for it, so I'll send it to you.
Yeah, send it to me. That'd be great. I've been meaning to use that for a debate case I've been working on.
So we just got done talking about what is it, the hornets, the gadflies, the sand, the whirlwind, and whatnot, and the pain and suffering that caused to the people before they met Charon or Charon, however you pronounce it. Anyway, I'm wondering if that the celestial justice is the hornets, the gadflies, and the sand, and so that the fear turns into the desire, and the desire is to leave the pain and suffering that they're getting from the hornets, the sand.
Yeah, those are the tools of the angel of justice in this capacity, as referenced in certain scriptures of apocryphal texts, which he had access to. Because
of course.
But he had access to them specifically because there was an apocryphal library in the Florentine Library at this time. So he actually had access to things like the Book of Enoch, which aren't biblical, but he would have had access to it.
This keeps coming up, but when we're talking about him not having read Homer, there's a lot of Greeks that he wouldn't have had direct access to. But we would have direct access to it very soon thereafter, because after the sacking of Constantinople, the scholars in Constantinople who still had we say that Homer was lost to us, but it was lost to the Europeans. It wasn't lost to the Muslims. And so when the Greek scholars who had access to Muslim records fled Constantinople after it was conquered, they were able to bring Homer with them and a lot of other works that had been.
Yes, including the thing that laterally led to my family's misunderstanding that they had carried on a pagan tradition through the witch trials. The Picatrix also came from this plundering of knowledge, shall we call it.
Yeah.
So that's why I still say pagan, if we actually get into highly descriptive conversation on theology, it's neo-paganry, because quite literally, as we go through the archaeological evidence, No, all the shit from my ancestors and just about every other ancestor in Europe on this particular teaching was killed off and burned and destroyed with pretty much anything that wasn't set in stone. And
Here we go again.
Jesus Christ.
Sorry,
No,
Ancom
no.
wasn't here.
Yeah, he's got a teapot that sounds like a car horn if he lets it go.
Oh
too
no,
long.
I was watching YouTube for that.
Oh.
So
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I don't.
yeah, no, I in fact I was gonna mention this is why I use electric kettles.
Oh yeah.
'Cause
they
any
shut off.
noise a stovetop kettle makes is just I hate it so much.
I do have an electric kettle, but it's at work.
Yeah, like Deshby held up a Japanese version of pretty much the same damn thing I have. Mine just looks like a 1950s percolator with that like mint enamel like outside coating to it, but it's an electric kettle, same damn thing.
Oh, by the way, Jack, something I wanted to mention. On here you sound fine. On YouTube, you're only coming through the right audio channel. Everyone else in Discord sounds fine, but you specifically just sound like you're coming from the right.
Okay, I'll have to figure out what the hell's going on with that after this stream. Thanks for OBS.
Well, just put OBS on mono and not stereo, and that should fix the issue.
Yeah, like I said, if it's not that, it's one of the other settings I have, like the smoothing in case of packet loss or something else that's causing it. Easy enough to fix either way.
Yeah.
But thank you, because that's annoying. Leftist audio, sorry, fucking audience.
Yes,
Pro streamer.
all you right ear people are not allowed to hear this.
Well, I mean,
We are.
what would make this funnier though is inadvertently the people who are listening to when I speak are only hearing it through the analytical portion of their brain rather than the emotional portion of their brain, since ears don't cross hemispheres.
Oh.
Wasn't intentional, but inadvertent byproduct.
I do find it slightly ironic that leftist audio, but it's only coming through the right ear.
Oh wait, no. So it's reversed. So I'm only hitting the emotional side of the brain, not the analytical side of the brain.
Oh yeah. You can only be heard on the right side, so that means
Oh great! So now everybody's just pissed at all the shit I say. Sorry, audience.
Wait, but the right ear goes to the left brain.
No, it doesn't. No, ears don't cross hemispheres.
Oh yeah.
Nope.
Yeah, it's one of the few parts of the body that isn't reversed. I believe the other one being the eyes. I don't think the eyes cross hemispheres either.
Too close to have a looping branch of nerves to create the crossover.
Yeah.
You know, one of those things against intelligent design. Okay.
Yep.
I mean, the one I'll always point to when it comes to nerves is the
That's just a mystery.
Brain, the laryngeal loop nerve that goes down from our brain, down around our heart, around our aorta, then back up to our throat, then back to our brain. It is a fucking
you think
way to fucking do it.
You think it's bad in humans? Giraffes have the same damn thing.
All mammals.
Yeah.
In fact, no.
But
In fact,
but
no,
I bring
take that
up
back. All mammals monitor. Holy shit! That would mean everything besides birds and insects.
I was gonna say I don't think fish have that
No, they have a different one. We'll get it. I'll look up in the ichthyo fucking nervous system later. But okay, so and fish.
Yeah.
So three. So everything but those three groups fucking end up having this. Jesus Christ.
Yeah. But I brought up giraffe specifically just because that's the longest laryngeal nerve, I believe.
I don't know if it's because of whales, but it is the longest.
Yeah, whales.
The one I'll get to is, here's a fun fact for you kids in the audience who don't do fucking morphology and taxonomy. Guess how many vertebrae we have in our necks? Guess how many vertebrae a giraffe has in their neck?
It's the same number.
The same. fact, this is true for all mammals. In fact, there is certain genetic defects where you actually have one more or one less vertebrae in your neck, and it almost always leads to stillbirth. So for whatever reason,
So if you were ever wondering why giraffes have to take up that really weird position when they're drinking, that's why.
Yep, it's because their vertebrae are like giant frickin' tubes.
Yeah.
It's why, actually, if you go back to the first archaeological evidence of, not extinct, but fossilized giraffes, they actually thought the bones from the neck were from a different animal because of how large they were.
Yeah, I can believe it, because, yeah, it's ridiculous how big giraffe cervical vertebrae are.
Well, and their ancient range stems into what is now the Middle East and Southern Europe, which at the time was tropical, so on and so forth. You're able to find some of this, like, I think the farthest north you can find it is like on the north side of like Sicily. So they're even able to find this stuff in Europe and North Africa, where like now you never find these things. But yeah, fun fact for the taxonomy nerds in here is same exact number of vertebrae. Same thing for a blue whale. Their neck, same number of vertebrae as ours. Can't see their neck though, can you?
Nope. But to be fair, you also can't see their hind legs.
On most, no. There's a few species that still get the atavistic rear flippers as protrudes, or what do they call them at that point? Claspers. That's what they're called when they're that vestigial.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, interesting fun fact. Now, going back to Dante before we go off completely into nerdville. This is like one of the things that they both do, and Dante did too. And there is a particularly literary significance too that we haven't touched on, is the way that he calls it dusk champagne. At this particular time period, champagne coloration is actually more reddish because of the barrels that they would have stored it in. So it is going to have a reddish color. So he's trying to talk about like a very deep red dusk color. And the reason this is significant is because this is a color that is not generally seen in his environment. Due to his latitude, it's not something that you generally see outside of places like sub-Saharan Africa and things like that. So, to me, I think this is him drawing literary inspiration from some of the Roman writers that he would have had access to, like Tacitus and Scipio Africanus, who wrote about sunsets like this in the deep of Africa, where he's trying to point out like the unknown, because like this is an unknown sky to the inhabitants that are seeing it for the first time there, just like that would be an unknown sky to anybody in Europe at this time. And I think that's another, like, it's before TV and pictures and all, it took like a year to do a painting, like, because it took forever for their damn paints to dry. Like people were very visual, and I think this is a big importance that he's trying to draw to, especially when you factor in, again, I think, and still to current day, and especially at this particular time period in Italy, red is both the color of passion and utter terror. Bringing it back to what Rich said earlier.
So, is champagne supposed to be the dusk, or is champagne supposed to be the river?
No, dusk here is just being used as an adjective for the champagne. So it's basically saying it's dark, with like a reddish tinge.
Yeah, it'd be like calling calling something xanthic. It just means
Okay.
yellowish. I didn't think it was trying to like specifically say the sky, just the air in general. Like I guess I should have clarified that, but like the
Yeah.
atmosphere around them.
So like with Charon, like carrying him across the the passage there, there's souls in the water and whatnot
Mm-hmm.
from the boat, and if this water is red, this just brings to mind the Sanzanokala, which is the river of blood in
Go deeper.
Japanese mythology.
No, go deeper
So
because I want to hear about this connection.
So the Sanzanokawa can be described as either a giant lake or can be described as like a massive river, and basically all the souls of the damned that are there are constantly rising and sinking. And inside this river, they're drowning in blood and then coming back, and then drowning in blood again.
So kind of like reverse Tantalus. Fuck.
Yeah.
What do you mean coming back?
So they reach the point of death, and then they're brought back to life again.
By the blood?
That's just how it is. It's like you go down, you struggle to stay alive, and then like you reach the point of like what feels like a death, and then you come back to life in the same predicament that you were in before.
Okay, so the reason I ask is because in the Odyssey, in Hades, blood gives you some connection to life, which is why the shades in Hades want blood, because it gives them like a temporary sensation of solidity, of connection to the living world. It doesn't last, but the blood that they're given by Odysseus and his men, when they're talking to them, that's the exchange. They're like, okay, we'll tell you what you want to know. Give us blood.
Well, this goes back to it being in the elder mythology, and when we go back that far, it is no longer the breath of life that is the spirit; it is the blood that is the spirit, and therefore the giver of life. So it would have been, hence the greater significance in Greek and Mesopotamian mythology in general on the focus of blood. At this time period.
What is
So
life? You don't say blood with death, but here it's life.
Basically, what I was trying to say is basically in Buddhist hell, or just in Buddhist existence, no matter which plane you're on because of reincarnation, if you want to go up a level, you got to do something good, and if you're going to go down a level, you kind of did something bad. So you're constantly rising and sinking in this giant lake, giant river of blood with a bunch of other people. And basically, until you do something good, something that's considered like enlightening and good, you're not going to move anywhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so also, this is, if you guys remember, I keep talking about the Republic, but at the end of the Republic, the afterlife is you go to heaven or hell, right? And if you go to heaven, but there's reincarnation after that. So you spend a certain amount of time in your afterlife, and then you come back. And if you went to heaven, the choices you make for your next life tend to be poorer choices. And if you've been to hell, you tend to make better choices in picking your next life. Yeah, so hell confers wisdom, and heaven sort of, I guess, makes you too overly content, right?
As the old
Complacent.
As the old expression goes, hard times breed hard men, soft times breed soft men. Like it's the same concept.
Yeah, that's exactly, the old red pill saying.
Well, but the thing is this is not a red pill saying, because the reason I brought it up in that way is the more modern context that the audience may understand when they watch it. But it is also, this is a concept that dates back to frickin' Zoroastrianism. Like this is,
I know.
this is just like.
It's just that the red pill has picked up on it.
Yeah, like honestly, I'd be willing to bet if we had the ability to know what Utsi the fucking Iceman fucking did for with philosophy, they thought this shit too.
Well, but the stark difference between like East Asian thought and this here is that like everybody has redeemable qualities and anybody can fall. and that's the main thing. So like at the very bottom tier, you have like the Oni in Japanese like mythology. Like the Oni are the people that basically torture the shit out of everybody in hell. But the thing is that like if an Oni does something good, they might go up a level. But the thing is that they have the potential to do good, but also the people that are the saints also have the potential to do bad.
Spawn.
I say saints, but they're like Bodhisattvas.
Spawn, right? He's a demon who
Yep.
sort of redeems himself and wants to get better or whatever. Actually, a lot of those characters in the
Chief General.
Right. Right, but what I'm saying is like an Oni does something good in hell. That means that when that Oni dies, no matter like depending on the like how he dies or whatnot, he will come back as like maybe a monster or a ghost. And then as a monster or a ghost, he has to do something good to come back as an animal, as a beast. If he does something good as an animal or a beast, he can come back as a human. Then the human becomes like the mystic and then become a saint and then reach enlightenment.
Yay, more human sexualism of separating ourselves from the aliens. I couldn't help myself.
Right,
I couldn't help myself.
But we're also
what
below a lot of other creatures.
Right, but what I'm getting at is that like how like the Christian view.
Hinduism?
Say that again,
Pardon?
Rich.
Like in Hinduism, cows are one step above humans. So if you're a good
Yeah.
human, you get to be a cow. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I was trying to like drive home with this is that like in hell there are certain people that are just screwed no matter what throughout all existence. Even the absolute worst person and worst being you could possibly think of in hell, if it was Buddhist, like Shinto Buddhist hell, that person still has the chance of going up.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Lucifer himself would still have the chance of going up a level.
I mean,
Let's
actually,
put it that way.
well, I mean, here's the thing. If you're actually going by complete scriptures, all 88 books that we have ever found, technically that's possible too. Just saying.
Yeah.
Like, technically
Well,
by
Dante
ancient...
does
Go ahead.
say that. Dante does say that.
Yeah, Dante does. I was just
So,
meaning, like, the
like-
ancient Christians used to say this too.
So if you go straight down to Satan, which will be at the end of this poem, the whole reason hell exists is because he landed on hell when he fell from grace, and it created this crater in the ground, and the crater in the ground is hell, and he's at the bottom of it. And there was a lake there, Lake Cocytus, and as he landed, he tried furiously to leave by flapping his wings. And the flapping of his wings froze the lake around him. And as a result, he cannot get out. But if he were to ever stop flapping his wings, then the ice could melt and he could escape hell. The only thing that's stopping that from happening is that his rage never ends.
Yeah.
So he can leave. He has the ability to leave. Externally, he has the ability to leave. But he doesn't have the internal ability to leave. He doesn't have the will that would allow him. You need the three holy virtues to leave. He doesn't have hope, love, or faith. So he will never be able to stop flapping his wings. But that's a flaw in his character. That's not anything in hell stopping him from leaving, or any of the other denizens either.
No,
They could
actually-
leave if they wanted to, but they can't.
By Dante's metric, rather than the original biblical metric.
I mean, I'm only talking
No,
Dante.
I know, but by Dante's metric, no angel that has fallen can ever escape, because no angel has faith, because all angels have direct.
Well, that's what I mean. It's an internal limitation.
No,
But there's nothing else that's stopping them from doing it.
except for the fact that
That's
they
their own
cannot.
internal character that's stopping them. Yeah.
Well, their actual creation on this one, because they have a perfect knowledge of God. They know God. There is no faith there. They can never attain faith because they have knowledge of it. They don't need that. You know, does that make sense? Like by Dante's metrics
Yeah.
given.
There's this weird Christian understanding of angels and free will, that they kind of have free will, but they can only make one decision. And once they make that one decision, they're stuck with it forever. Whereas humans can constantly make more decisions. I don't understand that. Like, it's never been sufficiently explained to me
I've never
as to why.
I've heard that, but I've never seen them give me any kind of scriptural reason for it.
Yeah, I mean,
And I can find none of it in the apocryphal text either. So to me, that just seems like dogma, or they are the older like church fathers who said that. We're talking about a text that we no longer, huh?
dogma by definition has to come from scripture, but
No, but what I was going to finish
yeah,
is
it's
maybe
interesting that somebody made that up.
but maybe the original church fathers also may have had access to a different document that we no longer have access to, and
Yeah.
therefore that interpretation does have a scriptural basis, but we don't have that scripture to base it on.
Possible.
And that's all I was
I think
adding to it. Yeah.
But
It could
I
be
don't think
either. I just wanted to be fair. Yeah, it could be either. I just wanted to be fair because, like, you know how aggressive they
we
get on
need a
these things.
theologian.
Yeah,
Is what we need.
but Eucharist couldn't make it because he had to watch the kids today because the wife needed to sleep in.
He's not a theologian, but yeah, that's fine. Yeah,
Well,
he
doesn't
I'm sure
have
he could.
the degree, but he. Come on now, like he's as close as you get without actually finishing the doctorate in it. He's got a master's.
Well, no,
in it.
I'm just saying. We definitely need his perspective, right, as a literature guy.
Or next week, because Beckett said he's going to try and make it next
Maybe
week.
Beckett.
Because Beckett also has a master's degree in theology and stuff like this. So like most of us here are semi-educated or autodidactic. Like these are the people who were like actually like UD educated in this shit. Like it's a different. And they can add certain layers to this because, like I said, like because I know the history of the text, I know it is more than likely that we have lost certain text, probably to intentionality, but if not intentionality, just the ravages of time. And there are certain things that people like Augustine and Thomas and Jerome and Cyril might have had access to that we have never seen in modern times, and we have no extant copies of.
People didn't cite their sources. They did not cite their sources at the end of the papers they wrote. There's the problem right there.
Well, no, sometimes they cite a source, and we have no source to. We don't have the source they're citing. That's the problem.
No, I'm talking about the cited sources at the end of the document. They're not using the correct CPA at the very bottom of the document to make sure that we can go.
They're not using MLA formatting, so we have no idea.
It's just like, even like the ones that do quote unquote cite sources, some of them are sources that it's just like, show me where that is anywhere. Fine, I don't have a PDF of it. Show me the university that says, hey, we have access to this document. You go to, okay, I'll believe it exists. I can't even find somebody who claims to have an existing copy of these things, and it's just like, and therefore I don't know what this reference means.
I blame the burning of the library at Alexandria.
I would too, but more than likely it is probably more intentional than that, especially when we know that was done over
internal.
A fight. Yeah. I didn't want to say that, but yes, that's my personal opinion. Is that
look! This section of the library had a magical fire. It must have been willed by God.
Well, I wasn't just saying with the library, because the Library of Alexandria, archaeologically, we now know, was burned either by accident or intentionality, but in a bid between Cleopatra and her brother. Like that, like we understand this, we have proof of this, etc. My issue is that wouldn't have been the only place for many of these texts, and that would therefore not explain why, for example, the Vatican Archives or the Florentine Library or the Venetian Library, or the library at Palermo, or any of these other fucking places don't have a copy either. Is why it's just
Well,
weird.
Well, who
not to
says
get
they
conspiratorial, but I'm like, I feel like there's a lot in the Vatican archive that like isn't public knowledge.
Oh, more than likely, yes. But more my
Yeah,
point is
so-
like, but nobody even references like of their scholars after a certain point. So I think even they either lost it or destroyed it.
Fair enough.
And the reason I'll add lost is because ravages of time.
It's almost 2:30 a.m. my time, so I need to go.
Alrighty. Unfortunately, I know that you're gonna not get to see the kids first thing in the morning because they're gone. But happy Father's Day to you, since it's that time for you. And
Yep.
I hope you have a good night, bud, and you get to see the kids sooner than later.
Yep. They'll be here by the afternoon, so
Yeah.
it's all good.
Oh no, I figured that. That's why they're probably spending the morning with Grandpa and the rest of the day with you. Yeah.
Do they do that over there?
Yeah. Father's Day and Mother's Day is a thing here. Just that my father-in-law hadn't had a chance to see the kids in like 6 months, so I was like, it'd be it'd be a nice gesture to
Oh yeah.
have them go see him.
What you got planned for your time with them?
We'll probably go to a restaurant.
Gotcha.
I'll let them choose. Apparently, McDonald's is possibly on the menu.
Oh no!
Well,
I can only imagine what a Japanese McDonald's is like.
interesting. I've seen some of the
It
videos.
is. It's like a Big Mac's a Big Mac no matter where you go. But I mean, there are definitely some items on the menu that will not only turn your attention toward them, it might turn your gut. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been many years since I saw this
French
video.
fry origiri.
No, it's been many years since I saw this particular video, and I don't know if they still do it at Japanese McDonald's. But for a short time, Japanese McDonald's tried to compete with Jollibee and offered spaghetti.
Yeah.
Interesting.
one of the items that you can get in a kid's meal is a thing of corn.
I'd take that. Take that over
I'm
some of
just
the
saying.
options we get.
Yeah, I mean, like that's one of the options for like a side menu for kids. You can forego the French fries and get this thing of corn.
Well, that's like I said. It's strange. Like I said, yes. And here's the next thing that's going to make your head spin. Ancom, the
Yeah.
spaghetti sauce, banana based.
What?
Welcome to Southeast Asia.
Banana?
Welcome to Southeast Asia.
Banana?
My friend.
Hey, I'd rather have a banana-based sauce than the ketchup that they use. Okay, I'm just saying. That
Fair
is
enough.
an upgrade right there.
I'm struggling to think of like what would a banana-based sauce be like? The flavor, the texture, the consistency. I'm struggling.
But Ancom, let me ask you this: would you rather have spaghetti with a banana-based sauce, or would you rather have spaghetti they basically just used ketchup?
Not even ketchup. It's like tomato paste. It's not even ketchup.
Oh, okay. Well, my first instinct is devil you know over devil you don't, but in this case it sounds like I don't really know either one, so pass.
If you've ever made spaghetti and you've had that either jar or can or jar or tube of tomato paste, and you ever put a little bit on your finger and tasted it, that's what goes on the fucking. If it's not the other sauce, it's that shit. Like think think marinara with all of the like thick particulate matter removed, and then concentrated into the consistency of like paste, like glue paste.
Don't forget the vinegar. And don't forget the vinegar.
Yeah,
Trust
the
me, there's
vinegar's
vinegar in it.
Yeah, the vinegar.
Yeah, there's vinegar in it. It's sweetened with vinegar.
It's
Let's see, if you were talking to my spouse, you would have just said the magic word because they drink vinegar recreationally. But, yeesh.
no, it's
I-
rough.
I-
Trust me, even they'd have a problem with eating this shit.
Yeah. Anyway, gotta go.
Have
Talk
a
to y'all
good one.
later.
Yeah,
Take care.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
good night, bud. Yeah, I got over the banana-based sauce, but yeah, banana-based sauce was interesting from Jollibee. Let's just put it that way. And McDonald's for a
Yeah.
short time tried to compete with it. It's not horrible. When you're sitting there trying to think of it, I'm just gonna tell you everything you just thought of what you think it's gonna taste like. You're wrong. Because I was too.
I mean, I imagine. Well, first of all, I doubt they're using Cavendish bananas. It's probably more like a plantain or something
Yeah.
similar to that.
It's like an Asian plantain, but it's also like it's still red. It still tastes vaguely tomatoey. Like it's really
okay.
weird. It's really fucking weird.
Interesting.
And Rich,
See, now
did
I'm
you
more curious than anything.
When you were in Asia, did you ever get to eat at a Jollibee?
I don't think so.
You'd remember.
Or if I did it,
Trust me, you'd absolutely remember the place that serves spaghetti, burgers, corn dogs, chili dogs, and fried chicken. Like it does all of it in one place.
Yeah.
And oh yeah, the 8-foot tall fucking bee wearing a goddamn 1950s diner costume, also outside every location is kind of unforgettable. It's I've only gotten to eat there a couple of times, but it was just wild. And I've never eaten the McDonald's version, but I saw like TV ads that like people would like put online for us to watch of like the ads in Japan where they don't even like hold back. They don't just put the word banana sauce on there. They put a picture of a fucking banana next to the word.
Oh, jeez.
They're like, just so that anybody who's watching this can't mistake what we're talking about. Oh, yeah, Japanese ads from the 80s and 90s were wild. And by the look out of the corner of your camera, we buy the same brand of paper plate. I recognize the pattern on the edge. Rich.
oh yeah, oh yeah.
Because that's
Yeah.
the paper plates I use for my cat food. Because 4 cats. If I had to do dishes
Right.
for that shit every day, oh god, fuck. Washing dry and wet cat food out of a bowl every no. It's one of the few non-environmentally friendly things I do is use paper plates for that. Oh, good lord. I wish you and Chris would have been able to make it, because we would have stretched it slightly longer, but, I think you could have, like, added a little bit of extra context to certain points on,
Well, I'm sure we can go back for a couple of things and ask him what he thought
Oh.
about it.
yeah, like, honestly, I'm half tempted to tell him, hey, watch it, and, like record your comments and put it in this, I'll upload it as, like, an after report.
Cut out some of the tangents. I wouldn't want him to have to listen to the whole. Some of the stuff we were talking about had nothing to do with.
You know, like water or like kettles on the sounds
Yeah,
kettles make.
Well, yeah, but
Yeah.
the difference is he'd be able to visually be like, okay, once you put the kettle, okay, now we're back to the shit. But yeah, I'd be like,
Unless he's interested in the kettle.
beyond to say, why do you buy one that sounds like a car horn? I probably think that's gonna be the only question you're asked. Because like I've heard ones that like chirp like birds. Now I'm not spending hundreds of dollars on a kettle that does some crazy shit like that, but
Well, the thing is, it gets loud. I can hear it anywhere I am at home, so that's the benefit to it.
see, that's why I like the electric kettle, because it's insulated, so it goes for a certain amount of time, and it will hold water at like 190 for like 15, 20 minutes after it's done, and then
No,
it's
I've got one of those. I took it to work, so I couldn't take these to work because I don't have a stove there. So I took the electric one to work. So now I use
yeah.
the stove.
Yeah, I have an electric one with a programmable base, and so once it hits that temperature, it'll actually maintain it for about an hour and then automatically shut off.
Yeah,
Right.
my
Yep.
grandmother had one of those too that just constantly stayed bubbling just slightly. I was just like, no way. Like, just
That's too hot for brewing. I keep mine at 202 degrees.
Yeah, for tea, I keep mine at 200.
And this one wasn't digital, so I don't know the exact temp, but it wasn't like a rolling boil. It was like off the little like heated dome thing at the bottom. Just every once in a while, a little bubble would pop up. Like it was like that edge right before boiling starts, kind of thing. And it just kept it at that temperature at all times. Now she drank Earl Grey and Irish breakfast, so that's fucking great for that shit. But at the same time, like, I just couldn't do it, man. The pot was glass. I just could not imagine leaving a hot glass pot on my like for hours, like on my countertop. All the heat that has to radiate into the room. You're talking to something with like, unless you were talking something solid, like you can't get much worse for like thermal generation into the room. You basically are just putting a big heat sink on your counter, and that's just like, I never understood that. So for me, it's like as soon as it turns off, don't get me wrong, that pot does get warm, but because it's insulated as opposed to the ones that you can like see through and all the other shit, like. You can only feel heat like off the spout, or like off like the edges around like the cap that goes on it. Like you don't really feel heat like radiating from the body. I mean, so much so that I can put this kettle as it's boiling right next to like my breads and stuff, and it doesn't make them like go stale or anything like that. But on that note, we'll finish this video and start the next part.